Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the May 14th, 2020 telephonic teleconference meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chairperson today. We will begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Whitehead, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Fleming.
Here.
Mr. Gill.
Here.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace.
Here.
Mr. McKinnon.
Here.
Ms. O'Connell.
Here.
Dr. Pritchard.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Tolles.
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks.
Here.
And Madam Chair.
Here.
We have a full complement.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Everyone should already have a copy of today's agenda for this May 14th, 2020 telephonic meeting. Anyone who wished to be a speaker on today's agenda has already filled out the attendance speaker's card, and it is in the hands of Mr. Whitehead. When it is time for you to speak, he will call your name, will unmute you at the appropriate time for you to speak. So please wait about 10 seconds before speaking so you can be properly unmuted and so that we can hear all of your remarks. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The members shall, as for this teleconference, let us know verbally they are recusing themselves. During deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purpose of maintaining a quorum. I would now like to get approval of our minutes from the last 4/9/20 or April 9th, 20 meeting. However, board members, when you make the motion and or second, please say your name so Mr. Whitehead will know what to put. Okay?
Pritchard.
So I would like to now get approval of our minutes from the April 9th Land Use Control Board meeting. May I please have a motion?
Pritchard,
So
I
moved.
move that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Darrell Thomas.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Say nay. Nay. Oh, I didn't mean to say nay. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Motion passes. Mr. Whitehead, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Yes, ma'am. Under the heading of Secretary's Report, I'll give a few perhaps extraordinary announcements as compared to our regular in-person meetings. The first of which is if you're on the call, not you, the board members, but you, the participants, and you are not on a case, our agenda is separated in two sections. Held cases, those cases held from a previous month's board meeting, and then the second category is new cases. The held cases are the mini storage on East Shelby Drive, the mini storage on Germantown Parkway, the townhouses at Barksdale and Nelson, the two-lot development on South Irvin, and the two-lot development on Garland. Everyone else, if you will, hang up and watch from YouTube. That will enable people who are trying to call in on those first 5 cases to get into the meeting. We anticipate about 100 callers, around 100 callers to this meeting, and we have found that there's a limit to the number of calls, which is why, since the last meeting, we are now streaming on YouTube. YouTube has about a 1-second delay as compared to the 45-second delay that the city's Granicus system uses. So let me give you instructions while you're still listening on how in the world to find the YouTube stream. There's actually 2 ways. You could go to youtube.com and Control Board. Some members of the community have lamented that we call our Planning Commission the Land Use Control Board, but it does have a great advantage in that if you Google Land Use Control Board, it's the only planning commission that's given that strange 1970s name. The other way is to go to the Land Use Control Board's homepage. There's two ways to do that. Google that page, and then you'll find the link to the YouTube stream at the very top of the page, or go to shelbycountytn.gov. That's shelbycountytn.gov, and then in the search bar, you can find the Land Use Control Board's homepage, and then again, from there, go to YouTube. If you do not need to wait and call in at a later time and you're just listening, then you have the opportunity to find the perhaps easier way to find us on the Granicus City streaming system. That is from memphistn.gov, the City of Memphis's homepage. At the bottom, you can go to the tabs. There's a government tab, a watch meetings tab, and then you'll find us on upcoming events. So with that, if we get 100 subscribers to our YouTube page, we can actually have a unique URL or a unique website that will be much easier to remember, and we can call out. So if you're a board member or if you're a frequent participant, as they say, like us, become a subscriber. We'll get to 100 users, and then I can make this announcement much easier in the future. Let's see. First, sad news and then happy news. This past week or so, we have lost two of our former members. Loyal Featherstone, who served up until about 8 years ago, maybe. He passed away last week, as did Lawrence Johnson, who served probably about 15 to 20 years ago. So our thoughts are with their families and with their souls. Next item, as the board deliberates on these cases, I want to add a very important note. It's an extension or an amendment to the note I made last month, and that regards in-person meetings. We are not having in-person meetings, obviously, for the foreseeable future, but that does not limit the opportunity for a developer or an applicant to have a neighborhood meeting telephonically. If a member of this body feels that on one of the cases that we're about to discuss, that a telephonic meeting, that some movement could still be made between the applicant and the neighborhood, I want to add this important note, that if this body holds that case for 30 days, it's not necessarily going to delay that case because the city council, by tradition and custom, does not hear land use cases with opposition during the budget season. So if we hold an item until the June 11th Land Use Control Board meeting, that would still put the matter in the queue for the city council in early July, which is the first time they're going to be hearing land use cases, we think, if they follow previous year's custom. However, not all cases before you automatically go to the city council, and that is explained at the beginning of our agenda in the notes. I think, the good news, is Mr. McKinnon has been confirmed. His appointment by Mayor Harris has been confirmed. He obviously takes the place of Mr. Norcross, who was affected by the term limits that affect our county appointees. With that said, if we can get back to some kind of eating and breaking bread together by Christmas time, we will certainly invite him to our annual Christmas lunch. With that, Madam Chair, I'll go to my statements regarding the consent calendar. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent calendar for those items where no one has requested a hearing and the applicants are agreeable to all of the conditions placed on the case by the staff. That will be voted upon in one fell swoop at the beginning of the meeting. If any board member wishes to discuss one of those cases, obviously that would, in effect, remove it from the consent agenda. I'll go over those before I hand the floor over to you, Madam Chair. But for the items that will be on the regular agenda, where we will have full public hearings, our rules of procedure allow each side, the applicant and his or her supporters, and the opposition, to have 10 minutes to present their case. That 10 minutes is cumulative. If a particular item on our agenda has a neighborhood leader who is not the first person called, and the first person who has been called would like to defer to that neighborhood leader, my suggestion is just make your comments brief and say, I'll defer the balance of my time to Mrs. Smith. And eventually we'll get to Mrs. Smith. At the conclusion of the 10-minute allotment for each side, we will go back to the applicant for a 3-minute rebuttal period. These periods do not include Q&A time between board members and the speakers. So going back to the consent calendar, Madam Chair, and this will maybe help a few people, applicants and potential opposition, hang up and get on with the rest of their day with a June 11th day marked on their calendar. The items that we foresee to be placed on the consent agenda are five items, beginning with agenda item number 5. That is the 2-lot residential plan development on the west side of Garland, just south of Peach. The applicant submitted revised drawings for that project yesterday. We made a recommendation that he disseminate those drawings with the neighbors before this body takes any action. The applicant has agreed to that comment, and so that is going to be on the consent agenda as a 1-month hold. Next item is item number 7, agenda item number 7, which is S2011. That is an 11-lot major subdivision in Raleigh at the northeast corner of Roper and Cypress, just south of James. That is on the consent calendar as an approval. The same is true for agenda item number 8, SNC 2001, which is south of Millington, and that is the renaming of a paper street to Tabor Legacy Lane. So again, that is consent as approval. That brings us to agenda item number 11, which is PD 35310. This is a gas station at the northeast corner of Hacks Cross and Shelby. The applicant failed to post a sign, so that is a consent as a 1-month hold. And finally, Ms. Wilbanks, as chairman of the consent agenda committee, item number 14, which is a zoning case, Z2004. That is a comprehensive rezoning for certain parcels adjacent to Lamar Avenue, and that would be a consent as approval. With that, Madam Chair, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. A few more paragraphs on procedures for today. Following all the presentations and after all parties have been heard, the chair will ask if the board members have any additional questions of anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case and entertain motion on the matter, discuss, and then vote on the application. If an applicant or speaker would like to be heard after we close the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional comments from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second, and then 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public meeting of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and the opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, we will revert back to the original motion to close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take the final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support or in opposition to a case, he or she should have already filled out your speaker card and provided it to Mr. Whitehead. Okay, now we're going to, the Land Use Control Board is a supporter of community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We're respectful of the fact that many of you may have taken off of work, adjusted your work schedules, or adjusted your schedule, even if you're still at home, to be heard today via telephone. But we ask that your comments be made within the time frame allowed. For example, if there's 10 people speaking in opposition, obviously you only have 10 minutes, so each person would get approximately 1 minute. So please stay within the time frame, and we do have a lot of cases and a lot of visitors today. If there are multiple speakers, please try to not be repetitive with your side's limited time. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to silence all your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings, as they still can be heard. These still can be heard if you are unmuted via this teleconference. At this point, we're going to move to the consent agenda. With our procedures now explained, I would like to introduce Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read those items 1 through 14, which will be on the consent agenda, which you've already heard from Mr. Whitehead, but in this time it will be in the form of a motion.
You ready for me?
I'm ready.
All right. Item number 5, case PD 20-03 in Evergreen. The request is a 2-lot residential plan development at the west side of Garland Street, actually 319 Garland Street, plus or minus 60 feet south of Peach Avenue. Staff recommendation is a hold for 30 days. Item number 7, case S20-11 in Raleigh. The request is an 11-lot major subdivision at the northwest corner of Roper and Cypress. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 8, case number SNC 20-01 in Millington adjacent. The request is to rename an unimproved dedicated right-of-way portion of Bethune Road south of Pleasant Ridge Road to Tabor Legacy Lane. Approval, staff recommendation is approval with one condition. Item number 11, case PD 95-310 in South. Request is a site plan approval of a gas station at the northeast corner of Hacks Cross and Shelby. Staff recommendation is hold for 30 days. And item number 14, case Z20-04 in Lamar. The request is a comprehensive rezoning of parcels adjacent to Lamar Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Now we're going to ask for a motion to approve this. However, the board members that approve and the board members that second, please say your name so the secretary will know who made the motion and who seconded. Can I get a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda as read?
Pritchard, I move that we approve the agenda as read.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Was that Ms. Wilbanks?
O'Connell.
Okay. Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor, say aye.
No. I'm going to move to approve.
Okay.
All right. Move to approve item number 5, case PD 20-03. Item number 7, case S20-11. Item number 8, case SNC 20-01. Item number 11, case PD 95-310. And item number 14, case Z20-04.
Second.
Is that Dr.
Pritchard.
Pritchard?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're ready for the regular agenda. Dr. Pritchard will call the item number and case number, including those pulled from the consent agenda, but we don't have any that were pulled. Okay, Dr. Pritchard?
Item number 1, Z1160, a correspondence item in Whitehaven. It's a modification to permit a mini storage facility and to reduce the minimum required setback from Farrah Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay, first is the applicant present, and since we do know there is opposition, we will hear the case. But is the applicant present? If so, would you state your name and address?
both the applicant and his representative are with us. And we are unmuting them now if you'd like to confirm.
Okay.
Yes.
Would the applicant please confirm that you're here and give us your name and address?
Yes, Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
Yes, Tucker Lewis. My home address is 40 Cunningham Drive, Freeport, Maine.
Okay, thank you. We're ready for Mr. Bacchus to make the presentation. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
and we do have a person in opposition, so we'll go ahead and do the staff presentation as you indicated.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Bacchus with the Office of Planning and Development. I will be presenting this case on behalf of Mr. Brett Davis, my colleague who reviewed this application in accordance with the Unified Development Code, as well as the original Kimmings-Wilson Regional Shopping Center, just located at the northwest corner of Feronia Drive and East Shelby Drive. This is a large block parcel that's zoned CMU2. This request is at the eastern end of that block, which was formerly the old Mega Market and also at one time the Fred Montesi site. So this district, this site is zoned commercial mixed use. It's a 7.6 acre site located at that location with is currently vacant. It's a large building that was approved for CMU2 district, the old shopping center district. The conclusions of staff, the applicant is requesting a major mod to Section 1, which is the eastern end of that development, to allow mini storage and also to reduce the minimum required setback from Farrow Road to 20 feet. This setback is on the north side, which is adjacent to single family on the north. The latter request is meant to retroactively legalize that loading dock attached to the rear of the building, and the site is that portion of the dock is also on Farrow Road. The site is currently in non-compliant with the general plan and the final plan. The curb cuts were closed, must be closed, and the improvements to the parking area and streetscape are required. Staff finds that this proposal as conditioned is harmonious with the intent of the code, the character of the area, and the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan. This proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the Office of Planning and Development, on behalf of Mr. Brett Davis, is recommending approval of this application with conditions. Madam Chairman, I do believe we have opposition, as well as the applicant has agreed to a friendly amendment regarding the condition 1C shall be changed to read, there shall be a maximum of one major loading area. I believe that is a agreed upon amendment between the applicant and staff. Madam Chairman, that's all I have at this point. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Right now, will any board member need to ask Mr. Bacchus any questions? If not, then we'll go ahead with Ms. Reeves. Okay, Ms. Reeves?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing us to speak today. This request is to repurpose an existing vacant building that has been vacant for over 10 years that we know of. It's probably been vacant longer than that. Global has a vision, and this is what they do. They go in and they repurpose existing vacant big box retail stores and convert them into interior climate control stores suitable for both business and residential uses. Global has to convert this into the indoor storage and also have the opportunity to have a few new out parcels, since they are not required to have as much parking as the previous mega market was required to have. They have a rendering of what they are wanting to propose on page 8 of your report, and it shows some improvements to a row of the landscaping of their parking. It also shows some landscaping abutting the building that we feel is a huge improvement from what the building looks like today. We would like to reserve the rest of our time for rebuttal. Tucker with Global has a few remarks, and then we would like to have the rest of our time for rebuttal.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and all of the Land Use Control Board members for your time today to hear our case. Global Building, I'll just give you a quick insight of Global Building. We're about a 15-year-old company formed in 2006 that found our way through the Great Recession and are now going to find our way through the COVID-19 recession or depression, or whatever it ends up being. I was a developer slash real estate operator and investor prior to that time, and have been doing this for about 33 years in total. My expertise used to be in developing new projects solely, because that's really what we were, where the opportunities were in the early 2000s and late 1990s. But we have since really tried to find a more a better way of doing development, which includes repositioning existing properties. We think that there are just going to be tremendous amounts of properties available, and problem properties with all the retail changes going on as a result of the internet boom on sales and retail sales. And we think that this is a huge deficit to the country that needs to be addressed, is how do we repurpose these properties, and finding uses for these properties is challenging because they're big empty boxes. So we found self-storage as one means to do this, and we've developed a few of these. We have one under development in New Jersey now. We've done some others around the country. The company itself is based in San Diego. I live in Maine, so that allows us to cover communities across the country. And then we obviously we're left with a lot of parking area. As Cindy mentioned, the still storage use itself doesn't really require much parking during the hours of operation. So it allows us to really think about how to redevelop this land. The other project we're doing, we're redeveloping into a 10,000 square foot daycare use and an IHOP restaurant. Of course, these are all challenged, but right now the indications are these are all going to happen still. And this property, we're just not sure exactly yet how we would redevelop the front, but the first step for us is to get the storage in place, which secures the financial position of the property, and we actually believe we can find financing for this in the lending community. So our goal is to get this first step done, get the project modification, the use modifications we can allow for the storage, and get that going, and then start thinking about the parking lot, and we'll immediately start looking for potential tenants for the parking lot. If it's a commercial use, or start thinking about residential and that would mean, how we would have to approach that if we ended up going that direction. That's basically the plan. A little bit about us. I'll leave myself open to any questions you may have. I think Cindy did a great job of explaining what the project is, and we really want to create a nice project here for the community, not beginning with the storage and hopefully down the road with additional uses in the parking area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does any of the board members have any questions for the applicants at this point? Hearing none, we're going to go to the opposition. And by the way, I want to remind you that our vice chair is keeping the time, meticulously keeping the time. So we do have a stop clock, you just can't hear it. Okay, we're ready for the opposition.
This is Daryl Thomas.
This is who?
Madam Chair, this is Daryl Thomas, board member. I do have a question of the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
go ahead.
I know, sir, that you mentioned future. You don't know what you would develop in the front of it, but I want to know what do you plan to do on the frontage to beautify that ugly building?
That's a good question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we actually talked to the planner about this because obviously the parking lot is unattractive. It's not really great for us and the storage use in the back. So the old site plan had requirements for some landscaping and some islands in the parking area, but from a feasibility standpoint, I don't know that it makes sense to do much out in those particular areas now until we really know what's going to happen in the front. So what we discussed was maybe trying to reallocate some landscaping in the parking areas where it would be appropriate based on the planning department's direction, trying to somehow bridge the gap between the old approved plan and the Memphis 3.0 plan. I recommended maybe we look at landscaping around the gas station, for example, with a chain link fence, which would likely stay in place no matter what we did with the balance of the property. So trying to be smart in where we put any kind of improvements in the front, but still try and find some way to improve the frontage of the property. So we're certainly open to ideas on that, but don't have a plan as I sit here today on how to do that. But would look forward to working with staff who, based on my conversation with Brett, have the city's best interests at heart in trying to make something work for the interim.
Well,
And
I thought I saw something where you were planning on putting planting trees on Shelby Drive at the street. And my question was mainly, what would the frontage of the building look like? How are you going to beautify the building?
can you
I
look
got it.
on
I got it.
page 8 of the staff report?
Yes, I just wanted to hear him articulate what they, making sure I didn't misunderstand it.
Okay, got it.
But
Yeah, we're not an expert in self-storage management. We're really more of an expert in redevelopment and development. So we will use a third-party manager for this, likely Extra Space, who we work with and who has done projects before. So we will paint the exterior of the building. We'll fix it up and brand it for Extra Space. Our plan is to put landscaping along the frontage of the building and in the first row of parking islands in front of the building. So cut out areas of the concrete in front of the building and put in landscaping between trees and ground cover to try and beautify the front of the building, and paint the entire building and basically just give it a much more attractive appearance. And this is a dual benefit for both the city and for us because that's obviously a much more attractive building for tenants to want to lease their valuables in, or lease space to put their valuables in, whether it's business or residential tenants.
And condition 5 of the staff report requires us to put in 11 trees along Shelby Drive, 18 trees along Verona, and 16 along Faro. All trees shall be native type C trees. So there is streetscape also being required by the conditions.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Any more questions of the applicants at this time? Hearing none, we're ready for the opposition. If you would state your name and address prior to speaking, we'd appreciate it. And remember, you got 5 people speaking, so that's approximately 2 minutes each, unless you have a spokesperson. But the whole entire time is 10 minutes. Is the opposition ready?
Madam Chair, the first person on the list is Mr. Charles Belinkie.
Mr. Belinkie?
Yes, Madam Chairman, this is Charles Belinkie. I'm only going to speak briefly and then defer the rest of the time to other speakers. This hinges on whether this complies with 3.0, and it absolutely does not comply with 3.0. A mini storage facility is not part of a neighborhood plan for an area like this. In fact, the person from the Office of Comprehensive Planning was only an intern, and she said, and Brett can verify this because the email was sent to both of us, I thought it would be better to reuse that vacant anchor with some kind of commercial activity. In other words, she's ignored the whole concept of appropriate construction in favor of anything is better than nothing, which is anathema to what we do. There are a lot of other potential uses. For example, something like the painted tree up off of Germantown, something like the Mercadito on Ridgeway. This can be an activated site that gains synergy from the other retail commercial in the area. Instead, you're creating a dead zone. The nuts and bolts, the applicant is not doing the build-out. They hope to get a contract with Extra Space. The applicant has no lender in tow. This is entirely a speculative project to put an industrial use, essentially a storage warehouse facility, in the middle of a residentially oriented retail commercial. I'll defer the rest of my time to the next speaker.
You ready?
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Yvonne Nelson.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to first say that this is not being properly done. I don't know who Mr. Tucker is, but there was a neighborhood conversation that Cindy Reeves was a part of that included 14 to 16 people. And during that conversation, it was stated that this was not an appropriate use. It was not a welcome use. And if I'm not mistaken, this has been held over because of the opposition of the community. I have names of people from Carlsbad, California, who represent this company. I agree with everything Mr. Belinsky has just said. This does not equal what 3.0 has in it for Whitehaven, and we think it's an abomination to try to put something like this in that spot. It was stated more than once by more than one person that we do not believe this is what is needed in that tourist location, nor for that neighborhood. It is not conducive with the surrounding uses. It will not improve or increase the value of the surrounding property. It will more likely do the exact opposite. And because storage units, especially this company that they're saying Extra Space, you can Google many stories about meth labs in indoor storage units. We do not want this in the Whitehaven community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you give us your address, please, Dr. Nelson?
I apologize, 3519 McCorkle Road.
Thank you. Mr. Whitehead, the next speaker.
Madam Chair, those were the two callers in opposition.
Okay. All right, thank you. Does any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Belinsky or Dr. Nelson at this point?
Yes,
Okay.
this is Darrell Thomas. My question to Dr. Nelson is, would you prefer just leaving the vacant building there and nothing in there? I'm just wondering, what's your proposed use for it? I live out in the, not terribly far from there, and I do see that building. I know exactly where it is. You don't think it's an eyesore sitting there with no use right now?
No, I do not think it's an eyesore. I think that the proposed development would be an eyesore, and I don't think the building is currently vacant either. I see a vehicle or two or three parked there when I am in that area, which leads me to believe that there is some activity going on at that location.
Mr. Whitehead, can someone address that? Is that building not vacant? I know the South Brook portion of it has something in it, but I thought that was a vacant building. Is it not?
Mr. Thomas, if you recall, about a year and a half ago maybe, we had a hearing on this property because there was I believe a jeweler or maybe more of a pawn shop operator who had conflicts with the Southbrook owner and the latter's tenants parking in front of his building. And so the jeweler or his landlord came to y'all to fence in the parking lot and make it a commercial metered parking lot, which of course required a special use permit. So at least I believe it was occupied at that time. From my memory, that was a going tenant. Now, was he occupying 100% of the space? Probably not, but I think he was occupying some portion of the building that's pictured on the screen.
Okay.
All right.
And
There was also a proposal.
Who's speaking?
There was also a proposal for an indoor trampoline park. That's what I remember the controversy being about, not about some jeweler. The gentleman wanted us to pay to park and to pay to play. We were willing to pay to play, but we don't pay to park in Whitehaven, and that did not pass. I'm not sure about that other part. And yeah, I do believe it is some sort of a jewelry store or something in there.
Okay, thank you.
This is Darrell Thomas again. I want what's best for Whitehaven as well, and I just, if you know, and neighborhoods are very important to me, as I'm sure my colleagues here. It's just that to have a building with nothing there, it is interior storage, and I was just curious. I read all of the information. Having that in there, I just thought would be better than just a building that just looked like nothing right now. And that's why I asked him the question earlier: what type of frontage would they put on the, you know, the facing of the building to beautify the building and make it look presentable? Because you wouldn't see the storage containers, from what I understand. It'll be all interior.
This is Brown Gill. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Thomas's comments. When it comes to Extra Space, is a first-class operator. It's one of the 5 major REITs. They do a great job. I don't think any sort of misbehavior like a meth lab is even a consideration. Secondly, self-storage is, in my opinion, a miszoned use. It's really a retail use. It's a low-intensity retail use. Everyone wants to store within 3 to 5 miles of their house, and I'd much rather see a well-run, professionally run self-storage facility than a vacant building on this site.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for the applicant and their rebuttals?
Well, one more question.
Okay.
Darrell Thomas, will there be any vehicles allowed to be parked, stored on this, around this area? Because I know the community had that concern as well. They won't be storing RVs and cars and all that in, because there's a lot of parking there. This is all interior, correct?
Condition 1B does not allow any outdoor storage of boats, recreational vehicles, or other vehicles. It prohibits those.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we are ready for the rebuttal period. If there aren't any more questions from the court, ready for the rebuttal.
I'll start very.
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Just in rebuttal, I think that these are good uses for these types of situations. I'm sure, as you all read in the paper, that a lot of stores are closing down, and these stores need to be repositioned somehow. Retail uses coming into these, major big boxes are less and less likely, even without a COVID crisis. It's, the whole retail industry is changing. So you have to find uses for these buildings. And one of the nice things about storage is not only does it provide a location for local people, because the comment about 3 mile radius is right. You're really serving the local community, but you're serving not only residential uses, but also business uses. So small contractors use them, especially as more and more online retail activity is done. These are great places for local people who are either building crafts and selling them and need to store them, or just running businesses. My son runs a small magazine, so for storing magazines as you're selling out magazines, and mailing them out. These are great uses for them. So there's a lot of different types of uses that use these facilities. And the nice thing is that they're all month-to-month leases. So if you have a big Christmas season and then not too much for the rest of the year, you can rent extra spaces during the Christmas season as a small business, and then sell out during the season, and then reduce your load and your financial obligations during the slow periods during the rest of the year. So we think these are great uses for local communities, especially indoor, where everything's very secured and clean, and you don't have to worry about either your home goods, or if you're a residential user, or your business goods getting dirty through under the doors or cracks. And we try to make them really nice facilities on the inside. So I think it's a good use for the community for those types of purposes. The other thing is, storage is one of those few uses where there isn't a parking requirement, so that we are allowed to do, get creative and do something with the remaining land, which holds value of some kind, that, once we figure out what to do with it. And as I told you before, we're doing a daycare and a nice daycare facility with a 70 chain operator on one part of our property in New Jersey, and an IHOP restaurant, and looking at all different uses for the remaining part of the land. So I think it's a good readaptive use of the land. To the extent that the front is built out, eventually you really won't see too much of the storage building, although we plan to make it look nice. And so I think that it's just a good way to get from here to there as far as the Memphis 3.0 plan, as outlined in my report. Well, Cindy, any other thoughts?
No, I'll just make it very quick. We worked extremely hard on this to get good conditions that will protect the neighborhood and the community, and we feel that this will be a major improvement over what the existing building is today, and we would appreciate your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board members at this time? Or any remarks? Any other questions or remarks? Hearing none, this closes the public portion of our meeting for this particular item on the agenda. Dr. Pritchard?
Move approval of agenda item number 1, Z1160, and that includes the friendly amendment.
Do I hear a second? Was that Ms. O'Connell?
Wilbanks.
Oh, Ms. Wilbanks. Thank you. Please say your name. Okay. Here a second from Ms. Wilbanks. Is there any discussion? Is there any
Yes,
discussion?
Madam Chairman.
Okay.
This is Mr. Fleming.
Thank you.
I would just like to comment that I think this is a really good adaptive reuse and a good green sustainable solution to an otherwise deserted vacant building that's going to add some life, albeit maybe not the type of vibrant life it once was, but it's going to begin to generate traffic, which is what rezoning and 3.0 concept is all about. It'll add energy to that site, and if the rest of the property can be redeveloped, as Mr. Lewis has said, in the future, I think it'll be a great jump start to that area. So I plan on voting for the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion amongst our board members? Any other discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. We're going to do a roll call vote on this.
Ms. Wilbanks? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Wilbanks, yes. Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
That's 10 ayes.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Agenda item number 2, PD 93-328, a correspondence item, Cordova, multi-story indoor self-storage facility at 2324 North Germantown Parkway. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Is the applicant present? If so, would you say your name and address? We do know there is opposition, so we will hear the case. But is the applicant present?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Chris Holyfield. How you doing this morning, madam?
Wonderful. Okay.
Good. Well, my name is Chris Holyfield. My address is 2371 Tower Drive, Monroe, Louisiana. And we're here to trying to put a 3-story Class A climate-controlled self-storage facility at the lot behind Shoguns.
Sir, we're going to have a staff.
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to have a staff presentation before you start your.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
Mr. Bacchus?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brian Bacchus again. I'm presenting this case on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Lucas Skinner, who reviewed this application in accordance with the approved outline plan that was approved in 1993 as well as 1997 as a planned development to allow a 3-story indoor storage facility with recreational vehicle and boat parking in the rear. As you stated earlier, this item is recommended for approval with conditions. This item was held for 1 month at our April meeting to allow time for the neighborhood to speak with the developer. This site lies just to the east of the Shogun restaurant, which is located at 2324 Germantown Parkway. Since last month, the site plan has been updated slightly to remove the parking lot from the 75-foot landscape area on the east. However, the site plan will most likely be modified again to show no changes being made to the 75-foot landscape barrier along the east property line. The lot is surrounded by other planned developments on the 3 sides except to the east, where there are single-family homes in Countrywood subdivision. A detailed site plan and elevations can be found on page 10 through 11 of your staff report. And per the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan, staff found the site to be consistent with the overall 3.0 plan. Though the site is specifically in the single-unit neighborhood category, according to the 3.0 map, single-family residential would not be feasible on this site. Also, the Shogun restaurant, abutting to the west, is low-intensity commercial services, which this site fits well. So staff has found the site to be very consistent with the category since the 2 lots are under the same plan development. Staff is recommending approval of site plan conditions and revisions to the outline plan conditions as listed on page 15 through 19 of the staff report. The developer has agreed to ensure that nothing gets built within the 75-foot buffer along the east property line. The fence that was proposed on the eastern line in the original plan would not be rebuilt so as to keep the vegetation, the mature vegetation, untouched in its current condition. However, west of the 75-foot landscape barrier, it will be altered in order to incorporate RV parking and boat parking on the site. This condition is also listed on page 15 of the staff report. Staff believe this use is suited for this lot as it provides a modern amenity with very low traffic volumes. Madam Chairman, that ends my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus.
Thank you.
Any board members have any questions for Mr. Bacchus at this time before we have the applicant presentation? Hearing none, Mr. Holyfield, we're ready for your presentation. 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. It's Chris Holyfield, as we said. We are a builder and developer out of Louisiana, and we develop pretty much Class A real estate, mainly commercial and some multifamily. We also, as a builder, build custom luxury homes. So everything that we build and design has a nice custom, it's a nice look to all of our projects. It's something that we pride ourselves in doing. And on this project, we actually have a 3-story Class A self-storage facility, which will be 100% climate controlled, with RV parking in the rear. We do have a management company, Strong Point, that we've actually started ourselves that will be managing it. So everything from development to building to managing will be in-house. The reason we're doing that, we're actually using CubeSmart on a project down at Lake Charles, which is a good, nice, big REIT, kind of like Extra Space and others, but they're awfully big. They're not able to stay on top of it like we like to have our properties taken care of and managed, so we're actually doing that ourselves to kind of go above and beyond. But we believe this is a good fit for that area. This is the upper end area with a nice development, and we're bringing a Class A storage facility that actually looks like a Class A office building with very little traffic that comes through that. And we hope that everybody agrees upon what we're bringing there, and let's just proceed with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we do have opposition. Each person that speaks, please give us your name and your address. And there's 5 people in opposition according to my chart, so that's about 2 minutes apiece. You have a total of 10 minutes to present your opposition.
Madam Chair, the first person on our list is Ralph Fagan.
Yes. Hello.
Please give us your name and address and your opposition.
Yes, my name is Ralph Fagan. I reside at 8279 Belgrade Place in Cordova, Tennessee, in Countrywood subdivision. Shall I present now?
Yes, and you have the total. Okay. All 5 of you have 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you, LUCD, for the opportunity to speak in opposition to PD 93-328. As I said, I'm Ralph. I'm a resident of Countrywood for 18 years. I have a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture. I've worked 30 years with allied professionals, indirectly and directly with OPD. I now find myself on the opposite side of the fence, literally. Like all of you, I use the submittal process, ordinances, Methods 3.0 Unified Development Code. I am critically choosing at this time to use my time here to not use the aforementioned to oppose the PD on a point-by-point argument. Respectfully disagreeing with the staff report conclusions regarding the compatibility with Countrywood, I'd rather appeal to all of you, LUCB members, and everybody present as homeowners tasked with making difficult decisions here on our behalf. Many of us, many Memphians, are fortunate to reside in areas that are able to insulate themselves from developments like this. You make decisions affecting the quality of our, for the rest of us, it's you that's making these decisions that affect the quality of our lives, my home value, and home enjoyment. The developer has been patient, listening to our concerns. As a resident whose backyard terrace is within 15 feet of his southeast property corner, I'll tell you I don't oppose him building his warehouse. I do agree with the part of the development that is low impact, and that is the warehouse closer to Germantown Road. My problem is with the RV and camper parking. As proposed, 50% of the buffer is going, the buffer I refer to are the beautiful woods. It's a natural habitat buffering us from this warehouse. I would like to also, so I would like consideration for him to further shorten his parking lot. I feel like he can do that, and it would still be a profitable venture for him. Number 2, I'd like to ensure that there is a parapet or roof line which screens all mechanical units on the roofs. All of us along this property frontage that is in close proximity to his development, we all have second floor decks and windows facing proposed warehouse. In the winter, the deciduous woods permit direct views to the adjacent hotel's lights. It is a so I would also respectfully ask that at the appropriate time that trees like pin oaks, which hold their leaves longer through the winter, and the largest growing evergreen type A tree we have, sawtooth oaks, be used. Consider the second floor views that are going to look out onto this development. I would like the rear facade, along with the parapet screening all bad views. I would like the rear facade to be a sky blue. My experience has been this is less objectionable and blends well into the horizon better. I want to thank all of you, and please take to heart the Countrywood residents who abut this area. And I'll conclude at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitehead, next opposer.
Ms. Jane Allen and or Mr. John Archer.
I'm John Archer. This is 8285 Montego Place North, just south of Ralph's property. I'm a retired professional engineer and a land surveyor. Now, I'm just going to mention three things. We've got a gas line that hadn't been mentioned. There's a problem with stormwater retention. And can you hear me?
We hear you better now.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the other thing is the gas line that needs to be located, and even during construction, it's a dangerous thing. One of my projects was working on a gas line, and we need to consider the setback. And my wife bought this property 38 years ago, and we've been there 22 years. And it just don't like the idea of that tall building staring down on us. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Whitehead?
Yes, Madam Chair. And the gas line has been mentioned directly and indirectly twice, so if Madam Vice Chair could stop the clock, I imagine she's probably stopping and starting when each person begins and ends. But as we look on the screen right now, that gas line is the diagonal southwest to northeast easement. And I don't know if you've looked at this property on Google or in the staff report, but the tree line currently abuts that diagonal easement up to its east side. So that's since it's been referenced twice. I just wanted to help the board visualize what that looks like. With that, Madam Chair, our next person on the list is Mr. Tim Halbert.
Mr. Halbert, if you'd give us your address.
Madam Chair, thank you. My name is Timothy Halbert, 8278 Belgrade Place in Cordova. I'm here this morning to appeal to the board, who's been entrusted with stewardship of how the city's precious land resource is managed. And in this case, there's just a delicate balance between satisfying the need for economic development while also preserving a natural buffer of vegetation that the surrounding residential neighbors have enjoyed for many years. As has been stated by Ralph already, we can appreciate the value and the importance of building the storage facility, that it is a low intensity use, that it would be consistent with Memphis 3.0 guidelines. And what our greatest opposition is, though, is the parking. facility that would essentially extend that commercial use all the way up to virtually up to our homes, and that's our opposition. As there's the natural vegetation provides a buffer that helps with sound, and it also provides just a tranquility that we've all enjoyed. So as I look at the guiding principles of the Land Use Control Board, I see three things that I'd like to appeal to. One is fairness. Secondly is wise judgment. And thirdly, civic passion. And I believe that wise judgment is being able to discern the nuances between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So I'd ask you to consider the spirit of Memphis 3.0 in making your decision on approving the full proposed development, and that it would not that you would not allow the building of the parking lot, which would house RVs, boats, and other things, in addition to having lighting that, as good a job as the developer is doing to try to minimize the impact, the lighting would be an impact. And so, again, I appeal to you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next opposer.
Mr. Frank Williams. Mr. Williams, okay.
Yes, you just unmuted me. I saw that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name's Frank Williams. I live at 8277 Belgrade Place, which is lot number 82, the only residential lot directly adjacent to the property, because all other adjacent properties are commercial properties. When I moved here in 1979, Germantown Road was a two-lane, tree-lined road connecting our neighborhood with Poplar Avenue, a very pleasant, cool drive with the smell of honeysuckle along the way. Heck, we had a 20-minute drive just to get groceries. But I knew that couldn't last because it shouldn't last. Memphis was growing. And that's why I was excited when I found Memphis 3.0, the plan adopted by this very body just last year, as well as the Memphis City Council. I was even more excited to read on page 5 in that document from Mayor Jim Strickland this, and I quote, "Ours is a neighborhood's first administration."
Madam Chair, this side has 30 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
Does that cut into my time?
Yes.
Ours is a neighborhood first administration, and that is the philosophy incorporated into Memphis 3.0, the long-term plan for our city, end quote. I would note that on page 14 of the staff report, the planner has somewhat editorially underlined the word consistent in his opinion of how that vision has been met. I disagree. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Now, the 10 minutes has been used up by the opposition. Mr. Whitehead, is there anyone else waiting to speak, and or do we go ahead and get from our board that have spoken?
Madam Chair, given the amount of people in the queue for future cases, unless a board member disagrees, I say we hold each side to the 10 minutes. And yes, there is one additional person in the queue, with that said.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to hold you to the 10 minutes. And so, board members, do you have any questions of any of the opposers? Any questions of any of the opposers? Okay, then I'm assuming we're ready to go back to Mr. Holyfield for your 3-minute rebuttal.
Ms. Madam, I've actually had 2 or 3 meetings, Zoom meetings, and conference calls with each and every one of the guys in the neighborhood, and we are always good stewards with our neighborhoods because most of our facilities are built, similar to this. They have a commercial front and they have a residential backing, and there's always people that are against. The first they hear is mini storage, self storage, and they hate. That just doesn't have a good ring to most people's eyes. And I understand that until we actually meet up with them and and tell them what our vision and what our quality is of our product we put in there. And by the time when we do get through with the project, everybody's happy with it, or they have been thus far. And we have been working with the subdivision. We actually had the parking all the way to the existing line of 39 feet set off of the property lines, which is part of the ordinances as it states as of now. And after meeting with these guys, we've actually pulled it back within 75 feet of the property line, and have agreed to keep the entire woods and underbrushing and keep it completely untouched, so they can keep that buffer there. And that's kind of what we've been working with and trying to be a good steward and be fair with that community. I know a lot of them do not like the parking. If you look up and down, if you get on Google Earth and pull up self-storage, 80% of the self-storage in this area has RV parking, as well as areas the south of it in Germantown. They actually have, I think Germantown Storage has RV parking in there right away and has just a fence around it with no landscaping. We plan to landscape on all three sides with a fence on all three sides for protection and for quality control. And we plan to do that to maintain, maintain what the 3.0 is asking us to maintain. I know one of the neighborhood gentlemen are asked, they do not like the fact that we're having a three-story building there. We're not building anything different than what's next door with the hotel that's there, but the difference is that's a Class B product, and we're going to have a Class A product that's going to look very nice and gentle to the eyes. Our exterior facade is a natural facade. It's made of stone and brick and stucco that has neutral colors. It's tan and that nature. So it will blend in really well with the surrounding. And I feel like we're bringing a good product to a good area, and we're working with both sides, the commercial and the residential, to do that. And I just feel like it's a good project, and hopefully we can continue with the development process. And at this time, I believe that's all we had to say. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, this is Darrell Thomas. May I ask a question of the applicant?
Yes.
All right. So I'm listening to what the neighbors are saying. Will they be able to see the RVs from their properties?
Well, their properties will have a 75-foot landscape buffer, which is a natural landscape buffer that is there now with mature trees and a underbrushing, which is pretty much a thicket between us. During the winter, you may see part of it, but we are going to put a fence on the east side of the parking as well as the north and south, and there will be landscaping on the north and south to keep you from seeing it from either side as well. So it'll be very minimal, if any at all, during the peak of winter. But all other areas, it's going to be completely covered and not be able to see.
So in the summertime, you won't see any of it. The winter, it'll be a minimum. That would be my guess. Yes, sir. I haven't actually walked the site in the middle of winter to see how far you can see through that 75-foot buffer, but I would think that you possibly could see part of it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions for the applicant at this time? Hearing none, this closes the public portion of our meeting of this particular agenda item. Dr. Pritchard?
Yes. Move approval of agenda item number 2, PD 93-328.
Second, Mary Sharp. So I hear a motion and I hear a second. Is there any discussion among the board members? Is there any discussion among the board members? Hearing none, then I assume we're ready to vote. This will be also a roll call vote.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Toll?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sharp. I'm sorry, Chair Sharp.
Yes.
We have 10 ayes.
Okay. All right, thank you. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Dr. Pritchard?
Agenda item number 3, PD 20-01, Cooper Young, 4-unit townhouse at the southwest corner of Barksdale Street and Nelson Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Okay, we already know we have asked applicants to announce yourself and give us your address, and then we will have a presentation by Mr. Balkas of the staff.
I believe we have Dr. Tweek and Mr. Kumar.
Hello?
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Joseph Dweck. I am the developer of this project. My address is 5392 Bentley Place, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, thank you. We will now have a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Again, Brian Bacchus with the Office of Planning and Development. I am presenting this case on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Jeffrey Penzis, who reviewed this application in accordance with the UDC and the 3.0 plan. The location of this site is, as stated, at the southwest corner of Barksdale and Nelson Street in the Cooper Young Historic District. This request is for a 4-unit townhouse development located within Cooper Young, and it's currently zoned, the site is currently zoned residential single-family R6 Historic District. Site photos are listed in the staff report on page 10 and 11. The concept plan, which is listed on page 13, and a conceptual rendering is on page 16. The revised concept plan can be seen on page 13 of the staff report. Additionally, we can see the townhouse structure would roughly align with the front setback of the abutting properties to the west. The conceptual rendering of the townhouse structure can be found on page 16 of the staff report. In the note as condition, the final elevations are subject to review and approval by the Memphis Landmarks Commission on page 26 of the report, which contains examples of alternative townhouse designs in acceptable styles. The site history is listed on page 21 through 23. The commercial structures that existed on this property in one form or another since at least 1920s, when a gas station and a commercial structure existed on the site, to 2014, when the commercial structure had been, which had been mostly recently been used as a grocery or convenience store, was demolished. On August 2014, the Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment approved a request to allow a duplex on the property, and note the duplex was never constructed. The consistency with the Memphis 3.0 plan is listed on pages 24 through 25. This proposal, the staff has found that it's consistent with the Memphis 3.0 general plan. It meets the criteria because it is in a nurture anchor neighborhood, which allows an increased density, and the request is consistent with the scale and building height descriptions of the anchor neighborhood single unit development. The conclusions of staff and recommendations and conditions are on page 27 through 28. This proposed development will not unduly injure or damage the use, value, or enjoyment of surrounding property, nor unduly hinder or prevent the development of surrounding property in accordance with the current development policies and plans of the city and county. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and those conditions can be found on page 27 through 28 of the staff report. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I do believe we have opposition on this project.
Okay, yes, we do. Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Board members, do you have any questions of Mr. Bacchus before we have the presentation of the applicant? Hearing none, we're ready for your presentation from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Baucus. This is architect Niraj Kumar, and I'm the architect for the project. Just for the record, my address is 125 Linfield Road, Suite 259, Memphis, Tennessee. I have been practicing architecture for 20 years. I have a degree in architecture as well as in the city planning. I'm licensed in 10 states, and I'm the principal architect for Design Group LLC. I'm also a design commissioner for the city of Germantown, so I do understand the process of review and approval with Land Use Control Board, and we are respective of any comments or opposition on this project. So just briefly introducing the project, we all know the project is located in the Cooper Young neighborhood, which is dynamic and vibrant neighborhood changing over the time. We feel there's a growing need for multifamily housing in this area, which is presently there's a lack of such. And we feel that this site is well suited for that proposed use. It is at the intersection of Barksdale and Nelson. Barksdale is pretty wide road compared to other roads in the area, and I think it's well it's good to serve the multifamily use. Also, before we submitted the drawings and application to OPD, we met with the Cooper Young Neighborhood Committee. We want to have our design very inclusive, so we wanted to have a ground-up approach. We met with them. We heard their suggestions and advice. We presented them the proposals, our design concepts, and we incorporated their comments. Also, we got opportunity to meet with OPD staff, including Mr. Whitehead in person, and we took their suggestion as well. We had virtual meeting with Mr. Brett, who is the director of Landmark Commission, and I believe at this point he is working with the neighborhood to work as a liaison between us and the neighborhood to get their input on this. So we understand that there's some opposition of this project. However, we feel that this is, we are working to have a very inclusive design, and we are receptive to any comments, and we'll work with the Cooper Young Neighborhood Committee, immediate neighbors, OPD, and land use board to ensure nobody is unheard, and our design is very inclusive. By saying that, I would like to go some of these slides we have just to present our design. So can we go to the next slide? So like Mr. Baucus said, we have our proposal is in alignment with the UDC 3.0, and these are some of the highlights about the criteria and provisions which we think we meet. Our design provides a greater choice for the environment and living, and the variety of housing choices. It doesn't propose any undue damage to any surroundings, environment, and any housing around it. And also, like, this is a residential development, which is pretty much, aligned with the character of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So our approach, like I said, we think that there's a demand for the need for the multifamily housing, and we are very mindful of the surroundings. We also working with, like I said, working with the Cooper Young Neighborhood Committee as well as the neighbors, and we are working with Land Use Commission. So our main idea is to have a very inclusive design at this point. Also, I like to say that the developer, they have other projects in this area, so we are mindful of the neighborhood and the requirements. So next slide, please. This pretty much shows, this area is pretty much predominantly residential, and our site is located at the intersection of Barksdale and Nassau. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is want to show that we are maintaining the character of what we see in the neighborhood. You can see the green area that's pretty much open space in the front. We have almost like 27 feet in the front at the Nelson, which is very much consistent with the neighborhood. And we have almost like 10 feet on the Boxhill side. The 4 units, you can see that, and there's a back alley, which is one way, and the unit will have the garage in the back coming from that alley. Next slide, please. This slide shows that where there are 4 units. They're on the 2-story. Every unit is like a townhome, and it has the first floor, which has a garage, kitchen, living area, and the entrance is from the Bostel, and the front unit, which is shown as the blue, that has a porch, and which is also facing the Bostel as well as the Nelson. You can see that these are we are proposing a quality development. Each unit is almost like 1660 square feet. It is 2 bedrooms, both the bedrooms on the 2nd floor, and it has also, the living, dining, and the laundry, and one covered garage, which is accessed from the back alley. Next slide, please. This shows the 1st and 2nd floor. So 2nd floor, you can see they have the bedroom and the laundry room. And the 1st floor, like I said, is the kitchen, living room, and the garage. Next slide, please. This you can see there's 1st and 2nd floor plan. There are 4 identical units. And the next slide. This shows the exterior view, the view from the Nelson and Bostel, and you can see, we are proposing a front porch with column and handrail, which is very much consistent and in alignment with what you see in the neighborhood, and it has a raised floor, gable roof, all these characters you see in the neighborhood. We are kind of trying to use the same architecture what you see there. The main idea is to have our design merge with the surrounding architecture. Next slide, please. And these are some of the views of the intersection at the area. We understand there's some opposition regarding the massing. However, we looked at it and see, our proposal is not much different than what you see in the neighborhood at the typical intersection. You can see there's the houses which are 2 floors. There's at the Young and Bostel, you can see there's a church. So our proposal, our design, is very much consistent with what you see at those intersections in this neighborhood. Next slide, please. And these are a couple of photographs, which again, the idea is to show you that we are very much consistent and with what you see, and so that we have our design looks pretty much same and merged with the surroundings. These are some of the views from the street, from the Nelson Street. Next slide, please. These are again a couple of views from the other streets. You can see they have houses, 1 story, 1.5 story, and even the 2 story. Next slide, please. This is a view again from the Nelson and Bostel intersection. You can see we have pretty much green area in the front and the side. The entrance to the unit, 3 units are from the Bostel, and the front unit is accessed from the Bostel as well as from Nelson. Next slide, please. This is another view from the Bostel side. So that ends my presentation. I know we are limited with the time, so I will have Dr. Dweck, if he has to present, or say anything about the project as a developer.
Thank you, Niraj, and thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the opportunity to present our case. Again, my name is Wasif Dweck. I'm the developer of this project. I have been I've been a Memphian for the past 20 years, and I proudly call Memphis my home. Our goal in undertaking this project is to provide a development that will meet the needs of many of the young professionals that are looking to make Cooper Young their home and gravitate to this vibrant district. We feel that there is a significant shortage in these units, and we feel that this is going to meet those needs. Since the very beginning, we have made it a point to work with the.
30 seconds. Sir, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, ma'am. Since the very beginning, we've made it a point to make this a grassroots effort. We've worked very closely with the Cooper Young Association and kept in close communication and taken their feedback very seriously. We feel that our goal is to provide developments that are consistent with with a Memphis 3.0 plan, that are consistent with that will hopefully preserve the historic architecture of the district. These will be upscale units that will be very modern with all the amenities on the inside. There will be upscale units, and we feel that they will serve the need. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of the applicants at this time before we go on to the opposition? Any questions of the applicants?
Yes, this is J.C. McKinnon. Just a question for the applicant. What are you guys doing about additional parking? I understand the one-car garage. Is there anything addressing additional parking?
Yes, the parking, as you can see from the images that were shown, there's going to be rear garages on the back of the building. But in addition, as Neeraj mentioned, Barksdale is a very main thoroughfare in that district. It's very wide. So there is additional street parking that will be available if need be, which I think is actually a positive because many have expressed, during our talks with the Cooper Young Association that the Barksdale Street seems to have very fast traffic, which is not a good thing, and maybe the additional street parking would serve to dampen that effect. So yes, there will be parking at the rear of the building, and there will also be parking on the main street.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Mr. McKinnon?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, applicant.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of the applicants before we go to the opposition? Okay, opposition, you have 12 people speaking. You have 10 minutes. So please kind of divide between each other unless you have an initial spokesperson. We're ready for
And Madam Chair, not to cancel out anything you just said, but we have 5 of the 12 who've actually dialed in, so they may get a little more than the 37 seconds otherwise indicated. So our first person is Olivia Wall.
Ms. Wall, please give us
Olivia Wall. Oh, sorry. Olivia Wall, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cooper Young Community Association, located at 2298 Young Avenue.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, first off, thank you very much for hearing from us on this matter. We appreciate your time. I do want to make it very clear that the applicant has not been working with us, as they just stated. We met with them once in March of 2019. We sent a detailed letter, which is attached to the staff report, which outlines many of our arguments. We are in opposition of the Barksdale multifamily development. We respectfully request that you reject this application. In summary, the proposed plan does not meet the Memphis 3.0 general plan as it relates to a nurture site in a primarily single-unit neighborhood, nor does it meet UDC guidelines 3.9.2 contextual infill standards, 4.10 plan development, and 9.6.9 special use and plan development review approval criteria. Our arguments on each of these points are outlined in our letter. A single-family unit would be the most appropriate to uphold Memphis 3.0 and the UDC. A duplex could also be considered as the Board of Adjustments approved that usage. Either of these options would be appropriate residential uses of the site to promote both Memphis 3.0 and the integrity of the Cooper Young Historic Landmark District, neither of which require a planned development. We are for development on this property, but a 4-unit townhouse structure is inappropriate for the neighborhood, the size of the lot, and it does not exist in the Cooper Young Historic Landmark District. Once again, the applicant has not been working with us. We met with a representative for the project in March of 2019, but our comments were ignored in regards to the number of units, scale, and mass. We suggested, as we are now, that a single-family house would be most appropriate with a maximum of 2 units on the lot for the project to be compatible with the street block and the neighborhood. Once again, neither of which require a planned development. Further, we believe the normally required neighborhood meeting should not be waived. There were 48 letters of opposition sent regarding this project and only 1 in support. That's 98% against this planned development. I'd say that's an overwhelming majority against this project from folks that cared enough to send a quick email. This project is not appropriate for Memphis 3.0, the UDC, or the Cooper Young Historic Landmark District. Please help us uphold the character of our neighborhood by rejecting this planned development. It will unduly harm the surrounding properties and the neighborhood. Thank you for your time. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Wall. Next, Mr. Whitehead.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brett Ammons.
Yes, hi. My name is Brett Ammons. I live across the street at 1914 Oliver, diagonally opposite the property. My main concerns are the amount of parking that is available for the project, and as previously stated, the high speed of traffic that does exist along Barksdale. I also kind of question the turning radiuses for vehicle entry through the alley into the garages. It seems very tight for me. I also would call for a virtual neighborhood meeting if an in-person meeting is not possible. I don't think that I think this meeting here today virtually proves that it can be done. And then just as far as the presentation of the design, I think that the design shows kind of a lack of understanding of traditional detailing. It is a mixture of parts and pieces and just doesn't present a cohesive look. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Ammons.
Yes.
Next, Mr. Whitehead.
Our next speaker is Jonathan Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead, Madam Chair. My name is Jonathan Cole. I live at 1889 Nelson. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak against this property. I emailed Mr. Penzies with a list of questions on May 5th.
Let me sit.
He did forward those questions to the developer in hopes that they would respond to those. I've not heard any responses by email prior to this meeting, and my questions haven't been answered today. I do believe it's wrong that we've not had a neighborhood meeting to discuss the details of this project. I continue to have concerns about, how is sanitation going to be planned for this set of units? There's very little space on this alley that's going to run along the side where the garages are. That space is going to be constricted by the components of the HVAC systems. I assume they're going to impinge on the width of that alley. If they're going to go with city sanitation services, does that mean we're going to have a recycling bin and a trash bin for all 4 units, a total of 8 bins pushed out to the Nelson Avenue street where we get our garbage picked up once a week. I also have questions about, I've researched this corner and know a lot about it. There used to be a gas station before the store footprint that was demolished years ago. have those gas tanks been even removed? Do we have documentation of that? Is it even safe to build a residence on top of this space? So I'm going to go ahead and allow others to speak on this issue, but I think we really do need a neighborhood meeting to discuss this. I don't find that the developer has been cooperating with the neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Whitehead.
Our next speaker is Ward Archer.
Hello, I'm Ward Archer, and I'm in the building directly across the street from this proposed project. I'm at 1902 Nelson Avenue at the corner of Barksdale. This project, in my view, is way out of scale for that lot and for the neighborhood. And I think it's out of scale because they're trying to put 4 units in what could be at best 2 units. I'm very concerned about the height of it. I think it's going to be probably the highest thing on the street by far. And it's just going to disrupt the historic feel of the neighborhood. And I don't, with all due respect to the architect, when he was showing those pictures of the other houses in the area, comparing it to this plan, it looks like a cat and a dog to me. So, and furthermore, no one has ever spoken to me about this. Everything I've learned about it, I've had to dig and call and so on and so forth. I've never had a discussion with the developer, the architect, or anyone for this particular project. So I would urge you to not approve this and push for a single-family development, or at worst case, some sort of a duplex, and I think it would be much better for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, our next speaker is Gertrude Moeller.
Hi, I'm Gertrude Moeller. I live at 1882 Oliver Avenue in Cooper Young Community, right around the corner from the proposed development. I have seen the plans for the first floor and the second floor. I think they're an improvement over what was once rather hastily and inappropriately erected there for development. Nonetheless, I have concerns. As someone who walks down that street and on the sidewalk that would be fronted by this proposed development on a regular basis, I'm appalled at the idea of having to suddenly encounter such a flat, unappealing cookie-cutter type of structure in a neighborhood that I bought a house in and treasure because of its very unique and very community forward appearance. It has a very vintage appearance. I like that very much. And for the whoever it was to claim that there are porches provided in this plan is laughable, except that it's so sad. There are clearly no porches provided. It's much too close to the sidewalk. There's no setback from the street. There's no historic appearance about it whatsoever. It does not blend with anything, not even with the small vintage structure across Nelson, where there is a recording studio, I think. That is a vintage structure. If you want to see what infill ought to look like in Cooper Young as much as possible, you can go right down Barksdale Street to the north and turn right on Elsie. And there you can see some structures that, no, they're not part of the historic community. Those are not vintage buildings. But there has been care to provide detailed, interesting, visually appealing frontages to those structures, so that even though they're zero lot and they are very close to Elsie Avenue, they have an appealing look, which is not a horrible, doesn't clash in a horrible way with the Cooper Young community as a whole. So I hope that there will be a neighborhood meeting, that you will reject this proposal as it stands. And I agree that a duplex, if not a single-family house, would be a much more appropriate use for this lot.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Whitehead, we've gone over the 10 minutes time, so do we have anybody else? Is this it for the opposition?
No, ma'am, that was our 5 speakers, so perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right, board members, do you have any questions for the opposition? Hearing none, we're ready for the applicant's rebuttal. 3 minutes, because you did use up your 10 before. Applicant, we're ready for your rebuttal.
Hello?
This is Architect Niraj Kumar. We are working with, like I said, with Landmark Commission and OPD due to the COVID issues. We are unable to meet with the neighborhood lately. We have met with the committee before, and we have been working with Landmark Commission, Mr. Brett. I understand that he's serving as a liaison between neighbors and us, and he's sharing our designs. We have made several changes and several improvements to our design based on his comments and suggestions. I understand by approving this application, we still have opportunity to work with Landmark Commission to make sure all the concerns the neighbors have, or even the OPD or Landmark Commissions, we incorporate those in our design going forward.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, I'd like to say that I'm surprised to see that people feel that they have been left out. We have been working with the Cooper Young Association since last year with Robert Hatfield, and we have been in very close communication with them. Regarding the email, I don't know. I haven't seen an email with questions or concerns, as one of the gentlemen mentioned. I really feel that I have other projects in the Cooper Young district, and I really take it very personally and make sure that that what we do is something that has a positive impact on the community. I sincerely feel that this project has a need. There are a lot of people who would love to move into the Cooper Young district, but either and there is no type of there are no new developments or very little new developments that can provide that need. So I think it's a good opportunity to allow the young professionals to move into Cooper Young. Again, what we're building is going to be very upscale, modern on the inside. We are trying our best, and we'll continue to work with the community to satisfy their concerns and to try to meet the architectural guidelines of the area. But in terms of density, that was something that was not expressed as a concern. In fact, it was encouraged by the Cooper Young Association. When we met with them, they stated that they don't have, many of them stated that they don't have a problem with the density per se, and that they actually encourage that density. They felt fine with that. It is on Barksdale, which is, again, a large thoroughfare in that area, and I think it is an appropriate fit. I have personally gone door to door to knock door to door to try to talk with people. Some have not been interested. They were either renting there and didn't really, didn't care, or some were not present, but I have personally made an effort to reach out to the neighbors personally by knocking on their doors. And as Niraj mentioned, it has been difficult to have a neighborhood meeting because of the COVID situation, but if that's something that can appease some of the concerns, we're happy to do that. So again, sincerely, I feel that this is a project that is...
Okay. Your time is almost up. Can you bring it to a close?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So, in conclusion, I just want to say that we are not the typical investors. This is not something that we're not just walking in here to try to do something and make a buck and walk out. That is absolutely not our approach. We want to make sure that our impact is positive on the community. As I mentioned, I have other projects in the Cooper Young district, and what people think is very important to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Your time is up. Thank you. Thank you so much. How about
yes,
the
ma'am.
board members? Do you have any more questions of the applicants right now?
Yes, this is J.C. McKinnon. I do have a question. Will the units be sold fee simple, or are they rental properties?
The units are townhomes that are intended for sale.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question. I do. I have a question. This is Brown Gill. I have a question for it sounds like a lot of the neighborhood has not been communicated with directly by the developer. I don't know of your requirement to have a neighborhood meeting, but with the amount of opposition you have, I would strongly suggest that you do have a neighborhood meeting to address some of the design concerns of these neighbors. I don't think any of us are arguing specifically about the density, but more about the design on my part. But
right.
I would probably like to see 30 days to see if more could be worked out between the neighborhood and the developer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I mean, I want to make sure that what we do leaves a positive and lasting impact on the community and the people. And I want to make sure that people, or most people, because I recognize that it's impossible to satisfy everybody, but I want to make sure that most people feel that they are happy with what we have done. I want to leave a positive impact on this area. So if people feel that they have not been reached out to, or the communication has been lacking, I apologize for that. That was never my intention. I have really taken it upon myself and ourselves to try to reach out to everybody. So if people feel that they've been left out, I want to make sure that we're inclusive of everybody's opinion. And as far as the architectural design, you know, this is something that is very fluid, and we are more than happy to continue to work with the Landmark Commission, with the community, to make sure that the final product is in line with the architecture of that district, with the historic district, and with what people see as something that they're happy with. So yes, we're open to the modifications in the design to satisfy most people. And Neeraj, from an architectural point of view, you might want to weigh in on this, but yes, this is something we continue to work on, and we've taken feedback back and forth. We've made many modifications to this point, actually, to try to take that into account.
And to add to that, I will say that, on approval of this application, we are still required to work with Landmark Commission to work out any design issues on the neighbors have the concern with.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Libby Pritchard, I think in view of everything that we've heard this morning, and especially with regard to Mr. Gill's comments, that we should hold this item until there can be a neighborhood meeting. And I realize COVID-19 is complicating things, but this is important enough that we do need to have that meeting. It may be a little later than the applicant would choose, but I'm going to move that we hold this item.
Okay. Madam Chair, this is Jennifer O'Connell. I have a question, probably for Josh. Okay. It seems that the issue is really the design of the building rather than the land use of a multi-unit project.
So
Agreed.
that really wouldn't fall under our purview. So do we, rather than hold it, do we vote on it, understanding that they have to work it out with the Landmarks Commission and et cetera?
So my answer is going to be indirect because it's really an option A versus option B answer. Option A would be, yes, you're absolutely correct. Because this is in a historic overlay district, the Landmarks Commission will hold a telephonic meeting, just as we are here, that will review specifically the design. So option A would be the Land Use Control Board and the City Council are completely agnostic insofar as the design, and then the Landmarks Commission will be left to work out the details. Option B would be, well, what if we, the Land Use Control Board and the City Council, provide some direction to the Landmarks Commission? They may not heed it, and they may go a different direction. That's always an option. But if we lock down a more a design that is amenable to the neighborhood, then we will save the Landmarks Commission from a very long meeting. So it's not a straight answer because both are acceptable, if that makes sense.
Is a hold acceptable as well?
So a hold would allow the design to be more refined for the time it eventually goes to the Landmarks Commission. Moving on it now would leave more discretion to the Landmarks Commission, which they may exercise anyway. So I hope I didn't thoroughly confuse everyone.
So what is the flavor of the board? Do you want to do a motion to hold this or entertain Dr. Pritchard's motion to hold?
Madam Chair, this is...
Go ahead, Brown.
This is Mr. Fleming. I think there was a
Fleming.
motion made. I will second that motion to hold the case.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to hold the case. Is there any more discussion amongst board members? Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I assume that we're ready to vote, and it will also be a roll call vote.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
And again, this is a motion to hold for 30 days, or
That's
excuse me, 1 month. And one clarification, I think the purpose of this hold is to allow a meeting. I want to put this out there to Dr. Dweek and Mr. Kumar that last month this body approved a rezoning down on Ketchum. The applicant is electing, and apparently to the satisfaction of the district council person, to do that meeting telephonically. So it may be many months before you can have an in-person meeting, but I would urge you to at least within the next 1 month to attempt a telephonic meeting. So that's yes on Dr. Pritchard. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yep.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
And Chair Sharp?
Yes.
10 ayes.
All right. Motion carries to hold this for 30 days and or 1 month for the purposes of a neighborhood meeting. Thank you very much. Dr. Pritchard?
Madam Chair, agenda item number 4, PD 20-02 Yorkshire, 2-lot residential development at 5455 South Irwin, formerly known as Case S20-01. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. We're going to defer this over to Mr. Whitehead. He wants to do this a little differently, so Mr. Whitehead, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to try to attempt to do this the way we would attempt to do this in a regular in-person meeting. We received notice last night that the official neighborhood association has struck an agreement with the applicant insofar as restrictive covenants that would be attached and referenced to this subdivision. With that, I would like to go in the following order, Madam Chair. First, go to Lou Wardlaw, who presented this restrictive covenants to just provide us a little update on it. Then go to Mr. McCaskill to see if he's in agreement. Mr. McCaskill is representing the applicant. And then to go through the list. I think Mr. Wardlaw represents some, perhaps most, but also perhaps not all of the opposers. So what we could do is skip the staff report, and if there are opposers, and if the board members have any questions about the case, then maybe we do a brief staff report at that time. But given the volume of cases and participants, we're going to just try to do this in an expedited manner. So with that, Madam Chair, Mr. Wardlaw, you're on the line.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehead, and thank you, board. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. We need your address.
This is Lou Wardlaw, 6410 Poplar Avenue, Suite 1000. I represent the Yorkshire Neighborhood Association and Yorkshire Design Review Committee. As Mr. Whitehead pointed out, I represent the bulk of the neighbors, but certainly not all. I believe you have some others on the phone. Yorkshire Neighborhood Association has been before this body many times, several this year. We've struck agreements with proposed developers. In most instances, we've taken the board at its heart to try to get good development, not opposed development just because it's development. In this case, as Mr. Whitehead said, through a great deal of work, Mr. McCaskill and his applicant client, Kyle Sled, and my group have entered into an agreement, declaration of restricted covenants and private agreement between Worldwide Property Hub LLC and Kyle Sled and Yorkshire Neighborhood Association, Inc. and Yorkshire Design Review Committee. We finalized that about 5 o'clock last night and sent it to Mr. Whitehead and Mr. Penzis to make this board aware of it. The agreement, the private agreement, and this would be a private agreement, does incorporate what the applicant has asked this board to approve. And our support of the application is contingent upon the approval of this board and the conditions that this board has already recommended. The private agreement further requires architectural review and is set out in a very detailed document. We've received the signature page of the applicant, Kyle Sled. We have not yet received the underlying lot owner's signature page. Gregory Griffin's signature is still missing. We understand that he has agreed to it. Mr. Sled has told us that. I understand that from Mr. McCaskill, and that Mr. Griffin is just out of town. But Mr. Whitehead and members of the board, Madam Chair, I'd like to point out that our support is contingent upon a condition being included in the Land Use Control Board minutes that this private agreement would also, while it's a private agreement, that your approval is notes and is contingent upon it, and that the agreement itself also requires ultimately Gregory Griffin's signature. So with that, I'd like to thank Mr. McCaskill, I'd like to thank Mr. Whitehead and Mr. Penzis, and thank the board for working with us. And I think you know how Mr. McCaskill and I have worked in the past, but we've worked very, very hard, very diligently, and up to the last second to get a comprehensive agreement that allows the support of the bulk of the Yorkshire neighborhood. With that, I'll pass it either back to Mr. Whitehead or to Mr. McCaskill, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Wardlaw at this time? Hearing none, Mr. McCaskill, we're ready for you as the applicant.
Yes, Tim McCaskill, 7891 Stage Hills Boulevard. Good morning to you, Madam Chairman, and the members of the board. This is the 13th application for a re-subdivision in this neighborhood in the last 3 years. All 12 prior applications were approved. 10 of them are within 800 feet of this site, with 2 of them being directly across South Urban from this site. This is the 4th case that I've presented in this neighborhood, but it's the first one with any opposition. And there seems to be two areas of concern from the opposition. First issue is lot width. The proposed lots are 50 feet wide. Other 50-foot wide lots have been approved nearby, two of them just 100 feet to the north at 1141 East Irvin. That was one of my cases also. They were all approved without opposition. The second issue in the opposition letters is drainage. The opposition states that this development will cause flooding, but actually nothing could be further from the truth. The existing homes in this area are one story, like ranch style with a larger footprint than the proposed homes. On our lot, the existing impervious area, which is the house, the driveway, the carport, etc., is 5,800 square feet. On the total impervious area of the two proposed houses will be less than 6,000 square feet. So there won't be any increase in runoff because the impervious area that exists now will be about the same as what will be proposed. The letters of opposition that brought up drainage stated, actually all of them stated verbatim, that this property is prone to flooding due to being within the Ridgeway flood basin, and the developer has not addressed this issue in the application. I think they actually mean the Ridgeway drainage basin. If this application is approved, we'll be required to submit a grading plan to the city engineer for approval, and that's before the final plat is recorded. So the drainage issue will be addressed at the proper time. It's just we haven't gotten to that point yet. But this small area of this Yorkshire neighborhood has already seen improvement with numerous neighborhood developments that have happened in the past few years. The new homes sell for about twice what the older homes bring, and this is a very desirable part of East Memphis. A lot of Memphians want to live in this part of East Memphis, and many of them are looking for amenities that the new homes bring. And I think this is a good development for the city of Memphis. And I'll reserve the rest of my time for rebuttal, if that's okay.
Okay. Board members, do we have any questions of Mr. McCaskill at this time? Before we find out if there's still opposition and before we find out if we'll hear the case, do you have any questions of Mr. McCaskill?
You ready?
Okay, hearing none, Mr. Whitehead, do we still have some opposition that needs to be heard? If so, then we'll hear the case.
Yes, well, we will find out shortly. I have a list of 8 persons on the phone, and so what we'll do is we'll go through them, and if they're represented by Mr. Wardlaw, they can, pass. If not, they'll provide testimony. But again, this will begin our 10 minutes of opposition time. That begins with Mr. or Mrs. R.J. Powell. Are they online?
Hello.
Hello.
This is R.J. Powell at 1187 East Irvin, and I share a common border with the proposed project, and I'm also a SIPNA member. Mr. Wardlaw does not represent me, so I'm just going to say I'm opposed to the project for numerous reasons, but I'm going to defer my speaking time to the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
That brings us to Mr. Trent Zetzelberger.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I live at 1201 East Irvin, and I am 1 yard from this property in question. I would like to say that I vehemently oppose this development, and I don't know who made this agreement, but I am part of the Sea Isle Park Neighborhood Association, which represents us, not Yorkshire. I don't know who that is or who's a member of it, but they are not speaking for me. So I would like to yield my time also to Mr. Collins or to Mr. Laster.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to Jerry Conrad.
in the impact
John
zone.
Red, can you say your name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry Kennard, Conard, 1201 East Irvin. I'm also speaking for Vera Moss, and she's at 5445, immediate neighbor to the proposed project. We all are members of SIPNA, oppose the project, and once again, we don't know who Yorkshire Neighborhood Association is, and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next opposer.
Madam Chair, that brings us to Andrew Halliburton.
My name's Andrew Halliburton. I currently live at 1140 East Irvin Drive, which is approximately 200 yards from 5455 South Irvin Drive. I want to start off by thanking the board for listening to my concerns. I appreciate your service and your time this morning. Excuse me. Over the past 3 years, there have been 7 zero-lot line homes that have been built between our property and Park Avenue. My wife, myself, our children have been adversely affected in many ways. However, I will only bring one concern to your attention today. I submitted some pictures. I'm not sure if they're available or not. They kind of tell the story about the issues that we have with drainage. We did not oppose these builds that were made on East Irvin Drive. The only reason that we oppose now is the after effects. So the drainage after the silt runoff and the inadequate drainage mitigation resulting from these builds, this is what's left behind. The large wooded lots that were present prior to these dense builds had the ability to adequately absorb this drainage runoff. Post-build, almost all of the property has been replaced with concrete that guides this runoff. The result has been that the existing ditches cannot handle the swift current, the heavy waters. It all flows through our yard. It flows through the street. I feel it's to the point it's created a safety concern for children, for pets. I do not feel like I'm exaggerating this. If the board approves this development, this is going to continue to complicate what is already a huge problem that was obviously not planned for prior to construction, and it still hasn't been addressed post-construction. It's my understanding there's a current study of the Ridgeway Basin. I think this needs to be completed prior to any future builds. I want to also bring up again that this property next to us, I believe, is the closest one to 5455, and that's approximately 200 yards away, not 100 feet. That's about all I have to say. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more opposition, Mr. Whitehead?
Yes, ma'am. The aforementioned John Collins.
Mr. Collins, give us your address, please.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Madam Chair and distinguished board members. My name is John Collins. I live at 5438 South Irving with my wife. We're vehemently opposed to this development for multiple reasons. But first of all, let me share this with you. We are members of the Sea Neighborhood Association along with the other residences of South Irving. Now, I don't know why someone else would strike a deal when we are the residents that are closest to this project. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any representative of Yorkshire Neighborhood Association in this neighborhood. I have several things that I wanted to talk about, but in lieu of time, I'm not going to mention them, but incompatibility to the rest of the residences on this street. It's only 4 others besides this one. The second thing is that I want to talk about street width. The width of the street is only 19 feet wide. That's hardly enough for an emergency vehicle, much less any on-street parking. Now, Mr. McCaskill made the point that they would do something with the drainage. He spoke to me at the stakeholder meeting and said he would build a stormwater retention basin on the property. That is physically impossible to hold the water that comes down the hill and on that property already. So with that, I'm going to yield the rest of my time. but please disregard anything Mr. Wardlaw said because it's not true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whitehead?
Our next speaker is Rick White.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Rick White. I live at 5378 D Co. My property is 750 feet from the property at 5455 South Irvin. First off, I don't know what this is all about. I had plenty to say this morning, but the fact that Mr. Wardlaw introduced something that I am completely unfamiliar with and completely unfamiliar with an association with that name representing anybody in this subdivision makes me withdraw my conversations. I want to say only this, that we have a study for the Ridgeway Sensitive Basin for which this city has invested $800,000, whose sole purpose was to try to put an infrastructure plan together for stormwater issues that face us in this neighborhood. To move forward without that completion of that project means we are not using our brains as we try to figure out how to deal with wastewater issues. I'm going to lead my time to the next person, to Phil Laster specifically, who represents the Sea Isle Neighborhood Association. We have many paid duty members. We represent many, many households. I have no idea where this agreement has come from. I have no idea what this association is about. I don't have any idea what Mr. Wardlaw represents. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we do have Mr. Laster, but he follows Mr. Bob Cremerius.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cremerius,
yes, this is
address?
Yes, this is Bob Cremerius. My address is 5390 Sea Isle Road. I want to thank you, Madam Chair and board members, for taking the time to listen to us. First, some of my time will be taken by saying that Yorkshire Neighborhood Association is a group of 3 people that have secretly formed this arrangement that do not represent anyone else in the neighborhood. And so this backhanded under the table deal with Mr. Wardlaw does not represent us. I'm a over 27-year resident of the neighborhood. We were drawn to this neighborhood due to the large lots and established trees. It's currently zoned R10. The waivers that have been allowed have been along the perimeter of the neighborhood on Park Avenue. This is causing a daisy chain creep of taking our wonderful lots and chopping them up into smaller lots. This lot is way too small to be subdivided into 2 separate lots. It's not consistent with the Memphis 3.01 plan or 3.0 plan. Page 151 states zoning amendments ensure that the form, intensity, and character of developments is aligned with community aspirations. Well, 27 of the 29 letters submitted for the staff report were opposed to this arrangement. Only 2 were neutral, and there were 0 for supporting this. So this deal that Mr. Wardlaw is talking about has no support from the neighborhood. It's not that we're opposed to development. Next door to me, there was a 12-lot development that I supported from the Albertine companies, but he worked with the neighborhood association, Sea Isle Park Neighborhood Association, and other members to maintain the R10 zoning, which is so important to our neighborhood and which is what draws everybody in. I'm going to defer the rest of my time to our chairman of this committee for Sea Isle Park Neighborhood Association. Please reject this proposal. It is not consistent or compatible with our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this side has 30 seconds.
Okay, Mr. Laster, you have 30 seconds.
Hey, good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Philip Laster. I live at 1336 Estate Drive in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been a citizen, in the neighborhood and in this community for 60-odd years. I represent Sea Isle Park Neighborhood Association residents as well as the board. We have about 3,000 households within the community borders, which borders Poplar Avenue on the north, I-240 on the east and south, and Mount Moriah on the west. So this area is squarely within our boundaries that are defined by the state of Tennessee. We've been very successful in working with other developers. We actually worked with Mr. McCaskill and did approve some of the other properties that he's engaged in, but I will make emphasis that this property is on the interior of the area, the boundaries, and it's going to be some of the smaller lots, even based on the ones that they presented. So if you look to the staff report on page 11, all these properties, PD 1705, PD 1807, PD 1808, which are smaller lots, are all on the perimeter. This is the first property that's going to be put within the interior, and it's even smaller than some of the lots that were put on the perimeter. Based on our understanding from just good guidance, the design, community design, is that it is appropriate to put smaller properties on the borders or on the perimeter, but when you start moving into the interior, that the lot sizes should be, again, consistent with the UDC. And then if you start to look at the street as mentioned by Mr. Collins on page 13, there's not enough room here to do parking, and so I just want to make you aware that that's an issue, and I'll concur with the drainage issues priorly mentioned, as well as that the setback on this property will be closer to the street than any other property. There'll also be multi-story. There is no other multi-story properties in the area as well. So at that point, I think I've got concerns about traffic. I'm sorry.
You've gone way over your 30 seconds that you had. We're going to
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to refer back to Mr. Whitehead. I have a couple of questions. First of all, since we do find out that there is much opposition on this, and we have heard the other opposer, which is now in agreement, and or the applicant, do we not want to let the board hear the case, or does the board want to hear it from Mr. Do we not want to hear the case? That's my question.
Well, Madam Chair, if any member would like to have a brief rundown of the case, either I or Mr. Bacchus could give it. I will note that this has been held twice, so I think y'all have probably seen the staff report, at least for a few months, so I'll just defer to the board.
Okay, anybody on the board want to hear the case, or do we want to ask any questions? First of all, do we want to hear the case? Second of all, do you have any questions of the opponent?
Madam Chair, this is Pritchard. I think, according to what Mr. Whitehead has said in my recall, we've gone over this case several times already. I do not believe we need a staff report.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, are there any questions so far from the board of the opposition? If there's not any questions, then we're waiting on Mr. McCaskill for your 3-minute rebuttal.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If you hadn't been able to tell yet, we are unfortunately caught up in a struggle between two opposing homeowners associations. The younger Yorkshire Homeowners Association has been working with us on design aesthetics, what the house is going to look like, how they're going to be set on the lot, the layout, that sort of thing. On the last re-subdivision I worked on several months ago on Sea Isle, which was next door to Mr. Cremarius, we signed an agreement with covenants and restrictions. Mr. Sled has done the same thing on this one, and they've really worked hard at it. They're very particular about what can be done and what can't be done. The Sea Isle Homeowners Association, which is the older HOA, has really asked us for nothing. They have offered to meet with us, but then never do. We had a neighborhood meeting in February to discuss our plans, and pretty quickly it erupted into animosity, so Mr. Sled and I just left. They weren't even talking about our subdivision anymore. They were just arguing back and forth. This has not been easy to work through, and I think it's more of a problem with the homeowners associations than it is with this development. And I really hope you can see through this and approve this application.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of Mr. McCaskill? Do you have any questions of the applicant? Okay, hearing none, then we're ready to close the public portion of this meeting. We're closing the public portion. Dr. Pritchard.
Move approval of agenda item number 4, PD 2002.
Okay.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second, Wilbanks.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Okay, is there any discussion amongst our board members? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. We will have a roll call vote.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
No.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Ms. Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
No.
Mr. Fleming?
No.
Let's see. Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
And Chair Sharp?
No.
And I do note that Mr. Gill has recused, which gives us 3 yeas and 6 nays.
Thank you very much. Motion fails. Thank
Agenda
you.
item number 6, S20-09, the University District 2-lot major subdivision at 3619 Kearney. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Is the applicant available? I believe you're still there, Mr. McCaskill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There is opposition on this case, so we will hear it. Mr. Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, Brian Bacchus with the Office of Planning and Development. I am presenting this case to you this morning on behalf of Mr. Jeffrey Penzis, my colleague who reviewed this this subdivision in the University District. This site is located in the R6 district. It's currently adjacent to single-family and multifamily residential. This request is at 3619 Kearney Avenue. The request is for a 2-lot residential subdivision. There are site photos in your staff report on pages 7 and 8. The preliminary plan can be found on page 12. Note the lots are not being divided exactly in half due to the location of the existing principal dwelling unit. This proposal is consistent with the Memphis 3.0 plan. As requested, the bulkwood variance combined with the companion subdivision request would add density to the neighborhood in a manner consistent with the area's future land use classification of anchor neighborhood, mix of buildings types, and degree of change of accelerant. The conclusions and recommendations and conditions are listed on page 16. This request is a companion to a BOA case, which was approved in April of 2020. The variance was to vary to allow a reduction to the minimum lot width and lot size requirement of R6 district. As proposed, the final lot widths would be 36 feet for lot 1 and 48 feet for lot 2. The UDC requires a minimum of 45 feet in R6 district. Lot 2 meets this requirement. However, lot 1 is 82% less, or 8 feet below the requirement. As proposed, the final lot square footages will be 5,800 square feet for lot 1 and 7,600 square feet for lot 2. UDC requires a minimum of 6,000 square feet in the R6. Lot 2 meets this requirement. Lot 1 does not. It's below the requirement. The subdivision is compatible with and in keeping with the character of the area and the neighborhood. It conforms to the applicable provisions and requirements of the UDC. Staff has recommended approval of conditions, and the proposed conditions can be found on page 16 of the staff report. Madam Chairman, that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have with me or the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Any board members have any questions of Mr. Bacchus before we go to Mr. McCaskill? Okay, hearing none, Mr. McCaskill, we're ready for your 10-minute presentation.
Okay, thank you. This is a request for a two-lot subdivision. This lot's 85 feet wide, which is almost twice the width of the typical lots in the subdivision. The applicant intends to upgrade the existing home and construct a new one on the second lot. Both houses will be offered for sale. They're not rental properties. The new home will be larger than most of the ones in the neighborhood. The existing house is 28.5 feet wide. The new house will be 27 feet wide, so they're about the same width. The zoning is R6 for 6,000 square feet. One lot falls slightly below that at 5,840 square feet. Variances for the lot size and width have been granted by the Board of Adjustments. So with that, we ask that you consider approval of this application.
Okay, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of Mr. McCaskill? No questions? Okay, we're ready for the opposition.
Madam Chair, we have two speakers in the queue. The first is Linda Saunders.
Ms. Saunders, if you would give us your address.
Yes, 708 Watson Street, which is inside the normal station neighborhood.
Go ahead.
Okay, our main concern with this is the size of the lot, which is requiring, the second lot, which is requiring this code change. It's just so small. And we agree with Memphis 3.0 that we need to make our neighborhood denser. There's a lot of development that's been going on inside of our neighborhood. But to shoehorn in a house on such a small lot, we're afraid that it's setting a precedent. It is a larger lot than some of those that are surrounding it, but it's too small of a lot to accommodate two houses. It's already a kind of crowded look to that street, and just for the sake of the neighbors who live on that street, we're just concerned that it's setting a precedent. It's too small. We object to this one, but once this one is approved, it cannot, it's going to open the door for anyone to kind of come in and shoehorn in houses. We've also been told previously by other developers that they plan to sell the houses, and then that doesn't happen. Once it's approved and it exists, the house can either be sold or it can be rented. And so that's another one of our concerns about this. And that's the end of what I have to say, and I'll turn the rest of my time over to Melissa, who I believe is also on the call.
Thank you.
That is correct. Our next speaker is Melissa Galloway.
Yes, my concern is not just we have been overdeveloped by this point with our Spotswood project, the 3 projects on Eccles, that are multi-unit projects have taken away a lot of our water retention area. We are getting milk water now again up through the street grade. And heavy. It's not just a little, it's coming in heavy, and it's contaminated water. This is not good. Our system just cannot take any more building, especially another multi-something building. As president of the Neighborhood Association, we have been built. We have met to the requirement. Right now, with COVID-19 and its impact on the university, we're not seeing any more places being rented, and it's not going to get better before, it gets worse. And that leaves us with rental properties that will be empty and vacant. And this gentleman may want to sell these houses, but you can't control to whom you sell these houses. We've got overbuilds at the corner of Kearney and Eccles. Huge houses that are not compliant with the neighborhood, that we were told one thing and we got another. We have 2 more developments that are down on Eccles that are fine, but we have got multifaceted units all over the neighborhood. And Spotswood, please, we're getting more backwater from that mess than I can even begin to tell you. Spotswood gets flooded. It's enough. We have had enough compliance with density. And
okay, is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Galloway.
Thank you.
Next.
Yes, ma'am. Now we can go back to Mr. McCaskill.
Okay, Mr. McCaskill.
Yes, I'd like to just reiterate that this developer, we've worked with him for a couple of years, and his method is to build these houses and sell them. He's not a landlord. He's not geared up that way. He's a builder and sells these houses. This house will be in keeping with the other houses in the area. Most of them are 28 to 30 feet wide in that range, and this one will be 27 feet, which is right in the same range as the other houses in the neighborhood. So we just ask that you consider this application for approval.
Thank you. Board members, since I failed to ask you, did you have any questions of the opposition? And or do you have any questions of Mr. McCaskill before I close the public portion of this meeting? No questions of either? Okay. This closes the public portion of our meeting for this particular item on the agenda. Dr. Pritchard?
Yes, move approval of agenda item number 6, S20-09.
Second. Mary Todd. It has been moved and second. Is there any discussion among the board members on this particular case? Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're all ready to vote. We will again have a roll call vote. Mr. White.
Mr. Gill. I'm sorry. Mr. Gill.
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell. Have we lost Ms. O'Connell? Mr. Penzis is going to do some
sorry, I was on mute. I'm sorry.
Oh.
No. My
Okay.
vote is no.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Ms. Wilbanks.
Yes.
Mr. Tolles.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace.
Yes.
And Chair Sharp.
Yes.
That's 9 ayes and 1 nay.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Dr. Pritchard?
Agenda item number 9, SAC 17-1, SAC 17-2, and SAC 17-3, Castalia Heights, time extension of closures of Keltner Circle, Carver Avenue, and Frisco Avenue west of Castalia Street. Staff recommends approval with conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchard. Okay, is the applicant present? If so, we'd like to hear your name and address, and then we will hear the case because we do have opposition.
Yes, on the line
yes,
we have
ma'am.
Mr.
My name is...
There you go. Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, Josh. My name is Forrest Owens, 1755 Linfield Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38119.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bacchus?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brian Bacchus with the Office of Planning and Development. This is a request for a 2-year time extension for street closures of Carver Avenue, Frisco Avenue, and Keltner Circle. The OPD case numbers are listed as stated in the motion. The conclusions of staff, I'm presenting this application on behalf of my colleague, Ms. Teresa Shelton, who reviewed this case in accordance with the UDC. The approval was approved in February 2017. However, the extension was needed because the applicant did not prioritize funding to improve the conditions of the closure or for the residents. The gates or street closures became a lower priority. The applicant is now ready to begin the street closures, and the applicant states the closure will secure existing apartment development. The closure will discontinue detrimental activity, including loitering and trespassing, which is endangering the lives of the current residents of the apartment development. The closure of the rights-of-ways would not appear to have an undue or substantial effect upon existing vehicular or pedestrian traffic circulation. The applicant shall comply with all of the conditions of the closure listed on the original staff report within 3 years of the conditional approval by the Memphis City Council. The graphic is shown for your review. It shows the hatched street closures as it relates to the apartment development. Madam Chairman, that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have of us, or of me, or the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Board members, have any questions of Mr. Bacchus? Hearing none, we're ready for the applicant and 2 supporters. You have 10 minutes for the 3 of you. Please be sure to give us your name and address.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chairman and Land Use Control Board members for your time today. My name is Forrest Owens, and as I stated, working on this case with ETI Corporation and offices at 1755 Linfield Road. I would like to make just one small correction, I think, to Mr. Bacchus's report there. In actuality, the owners did prioritize wanted to prioritize improving the conditions for the residents, and put a lesser priority on closing the gates, and so they put a substantial amount of money into improving the neighborhood, including the roofs and remodel. And so I'm not sure if that's what Mr. Bacchus stated, but just a small correction. So we appreciate this body's prior approval, the Land Use Control Board's prior approval of our application, and along with the City Council's approval. Just a real brief history. The owners purchased the property in or around December of 2016, and they did immediately begin to improve the property. They wanted to improve the conditions for the residents, and so they prioritized their funding into improving the homes within the neighborhood, or the apartments within the neighborhood, and spent a considerable amount of investment into that, both interior and exterior. And they've increased the occupancy of the complex from 35% to 100% as a result of that. After improving the housing conditions for the residents, and because of the security reasons that are stated in the application, we are now ready to begin the street closures. We believe that the gates will help deter detrimental activity, including loitering, trespassing, and also increase the safety of the residents. I know there's been a question, at least I think I saw a question about fire and police and waste removal services, and as with any gated community, the fire, the police, and waste removal services will have full access to the property. In addition, we do have a security company that is on site, and they are assisting in securing the neighborhood and protecting the residents. And as noted in the staff report, there's no restriction to pedestrian access with this request. We have reviewed and agreed to the conditions of the staff report, and we also appreciate staff's recommendation of approval. And Madam Chairman, as stated previously, we do have an owner's representative, the owner's representative, as well as the head of our security company, who would like to speak in support of this application. And I would like to reserve any time we have left after them for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Supporters, please give us your name and address in your presentation.
Hi, my name is Moshe Silberstein. I am owner's representative, a member of the ownership group. And again, I thank the committee for their prior support and their really thorough understanding of what we're looking to achieve here. Again, just to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Owens said, this was done as everything that we've done, and all the tremendous amount of money invested into this property, which is unprecedented for this property in particular, and in this neighborhood in particular. We strongly believe in the ability of this particular complex to be kind of a shining star of what this neighborhood could be. And just regarding some of the opposition that we've seen and some of the letters that we've seen, I mean, it's understandable. Change is something that's going to be hard, and I respect that. We all respect that, and we try to work with our neighbors as best we can. The most important priority we have is the safety and well-being of our residents. We've invested in that as a priority from day one by making sure that their housing was the best quality it could be. Maintaining safety we have a significant amount of single mothers in the complex who work every day, who want safety for their children. And that's always been our priority. We've recently, as recently as a week ago, we had a gang of about 20 cars ride right through the complex. We have security footage of that if the board would need it, but, hanging out of windows, it's just the driving through the complex, the foot traffic through the complex. It really is something that we are concerned about for our residents and always have been. And for us, the real priority is the safety and security of our residents. This will not affect the rents we can get. We're already doing very well as far as our occupancy, and our management is fantastic. And this is really to solidify that a single mother can rest easy that her child is safe when he's playing outside in the driveway, or when she's hopscotching with her friends, whoever it is. The number one priority for us is that the children and that the innocent people of our complex don't have to endure any more of the outside traffic that comes in through the complex, probably from other neighborhoods, to cause trouble. And again, we appreciate the board's support. And just one thing in one of the opposition letters, I would just like this to put on the record. We understand everything that people are concerned about, and we respect it. However, in the first letter from Iverna Andrews, I would refer you on page 2 in the middle paragraph. There was a reference to creating a concentration camp, and myself as a grandchild of survivors of concentration camps do not find that appropriate at all. And I believe all of this can be discussed in respectful and understanding while we listen to each other with coherent dialogue based on the realities on the ground. Again, I thank you, and we look forward to approval.
Thank you, Mr. Silverstein. We have one more supporter.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Jason Motes, Corporate Protective Solutions. Address is 230 Goodman Road East, Building 2, Suite 201. I wanted to, yes, ma'am. I just wanted to echo basically what he was just saying. But I've worked with, I've been in emergency services for 34 years, Madam Chair, and the board, fire service, law enforcement, etc. And I just want to make a point that the gates are not going to reduce the ability or capacity to allow police, fire, EMS, postal service, county workers, etc., work with another property doing the same thing. But in my years of experience, security starts at the perimeter. I just want to remind the board that any facility that has a strong perimeter has a safer environment. And with that, would echo what was previously said about the children. The rate of speed through the complex is enormous. Most of that traffic has no destination in the complex. It puts there's a lot of youth in the community there, and it definitely jeopardizes safety. I've witnessed this firsthand with vehicles swerving up onto the sidewalk, etc. So it'll definitely help with that matter. It'll also, in my opinion and experience in the Memphis area, it'll reduce the call volume of law enforcement, which will allow them to concentrate on other measures or patrol the city as a whole or their precinct as a whole. And I think that in itself is a major plus. And also, it's my opinion that in practices where we've done this and having that and associated with security cameras, we've actually been able to aid the community in settling cases in the area that may not even be related to the property. So I can't find a negative in my eyes for the project, and I'll yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Board members, do you have any questions of the supporters and or the applicant? I'm assuming, Mr. Whitehead, that that's it on the supporters and applicant.
Yes, ma'am.
Board members, any questions? Okay, we're ready for the one opposer.
This is Ms. Doris Brody.
Ms. Brody, if you give us your name and address.
Yes. My name is Doris Bodie. My property address is 1948 Frisco. I am in agreement with it. I wasn't opposing it. I was in agreement with it. And I am in favor with it. And I think it's a good idea. It kind of slows the fast traffic that we usually get. My only concern was the emergency vehicles, and I think someone has already spoken on that. If you're not kind of familiar with that area, you'd have to enter in from Castalia, or you'd have to enter in from Hayes. If you're going up La Paloma, you wouldn't be able to get to Carver or Frisco. But I am in favor of it. I think it's a great idea, and I appreciate you letting me give you my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board members, any questions of anybody at this time before we come back to the applicant for a 3-minute rebuttal if he has any? And whoever mentioned hops, they must be about my age, because I don't remember hopscotch anytime soon. But anyway, let's go back to the applicant.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we have nothing further to add. We just would respectfully request your approval.
Okay. If there aren't any more questions, this is going to close the public portion of our meeting. Dr. Pritchard.
Move approval of agenda item number 9, SAC 17-1, SAC 17-2, and SAC 17-3.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Will Banks.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Well, this is J.C. McKinnon. Just wanted to say I'm very familiar with this area, the neighborhood. Spent some time in Magnolia Elementary, and have been in this neighborhood for, driven through and passed out food with my church as well. I think it's a great idea that you guys are doing this, and I wish this would have came about a long time ago. But nonetheless, it is here today, and for that reason, I am voting yes for the project, for this to be closed.
Okay, thank you. We're ready for the vote. I'm assuming we're ready for the vote. Is there any discussion? And we should do that by roll call as well, since we're unseen.
Dr. Pritchard.
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Mr. Gill.
Yes.
Mr. Tolles.
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks.
Yes.
Mr. Fleming.
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Chair Sharp.
Yes.
10 ayes.
10 ayes. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Pritchard.
And Dr. Pritchard, I'm sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to make an announcement. We only have 3 hearings left, so if you are out there in YouTube land, you can go ahead and join us, because we have such a reduced number of callers we can withstand. So I just want to make that public. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Pritchard.
Agenda item number 10, PDRCI 94, correspondence item, Whitten, modification to allow a gas station on the west side of Whitten, south of I-40. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Thank you. Applicant, are you present? We do know we have opposition, so we will hear the case. but I'd like to see if the applicant is here with your name and address, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, I am present. My name is Daniel Chambers, and I work for Quick Trip Corporation, and I office out of 4705 South 129th East Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, Brian Bacchus of the Office of Planning and Development. I'm presenting this case to you this afternoon on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Seth Thomas. This is a plan development application to allow a convenience store with gasoline sales and also diesel sales at the southwest intersection of I-240 and Whitten Road. This location is south of I-240, just north of Century Center Parkway. The staff has recommended approval with conditions. This application is part of the Whitten I-40 plan development. This development was approved in the early 80s, one of the first plan developments that were approved under the 1980 code. The request is to modify a major modification to allow a convenience store with gasoline sales and diesel sales located at this intersection. The site is located just south of I-240 with 3 street frontages. The adjacent land uses are commercial, industrial, and office. The site photos of the lot are on pages 9 through 10, and also on page 12 you'll see the subject property. Consistency with the Memphis 3.0 comprehensive plan, it is compatible with the adjacent commercial land uses. The request will be a 1-story structure which is located outside of the anchor boundary. The size of the parcel is large enough to construct a fueling convenience store with gasoline sales, which would be a permissible use or permitted use in the proposed future land use map. Conclusions on page 14, staff agrees the approval criteria set forth in section 9.24.6 are met. The project would not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon adjacent properties, the character of the neighborhood, traffic conditions, parking, utilities, and matters affecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Recommendation and conditions are on page 14 through 16, and staff has recommended approval with conditions. Note the conditions primarily focus on the building design and the parking. The conditions as listed are 1 through 9, as stated on page 15 of the staff report. Madam Chairman, that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have of me or staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bacchus. Any board members have any questions of Mr. Bacchus? Okay, hearing none, I assume we're ready for the applicant's presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and board members. As stated, my name is Daniel Chambers, and I work for Quick Trip Corporation. To give you a little bit about Quick Trip, we've been around for 60 years. We've been mostly a regionalized convenience store. We are expanding out, and the proposed site that we have in front of us is going to be the first part of our expansion into Memphis. We are, all of our stores are corporate owned. We do not franchise any of our stores. All the employees that are working, all the way down from the maintenance people to the store employees, they're all actual Quick Trip employees like myself. We do all of our own development in-house. We have engaged a local development consultant. Cindy Reeves is also working with us to partner with us on this project and help us guide us through this process. We are good with all the conditions. I did want to clarify condition number 6, though. Condition number 6 says no overnight truck parking. We do not encourage long-term stays on our truck lot. That's why we have a very reduced amount of over-the-road truck parks. However, if a truck driver does pull in and it is, say, 10 o'clock at night and he has to be off the road for 6 hours because of his drive time, he would be able to stay in that parking lot till his drive time is up and he's allowed to get back on the road per DOT. We do not allow any undocking of a tractor trailer on our lot. Our convenience store is not a traditional truck stop. We don't have any trucker lounge facilities. We don't have any shower facilities, any sort of lounge facility. So the intention of what we're trying to do is we want to get the customers, we want to get them in and we want to get them out. We don't encourage any long-term stays on our lot. So I did want to clarify condition number 6 so that you guys fully understand what we do and how we operate our business. We have worked extensively with Mr. Thomas and Mr. Ragsdale on our building elevations as well as our site plan. What you see in front of you guys today is, I believe it's the 3rd iteration that we work. So they've been a pleasure to work with. So compliments to your guys' staff. They've been great to work with. I will defer my time, but if you guys have any questions about how we do anything operationally or any other questions that you might have, I'm here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to speak for the applicant, Ms. Reeves? Okay, if not, we're ready for the opposition. And we have three opposers. That's about 3.5 minutes each.
Well, Madam Chair, it appears we only have one on the line, Mr. David Smalley.
Okay, Mr. Smalley, it's all yours.
Yeah, my name is David Smalley. I'm at the business 1701 Century Center Park, Century Center Cove, which is adjacent to the proposed facility. So, good morning. My name is actually Dr. David Smalley. I'm the president of American Esoteric Laboratories, known as AEL. AEL is the largest diagnostic laboratory in Tennessee, and we have over 800 employees, of which more than 400 are housed at Century Center Cove, adjacent to the proposed development. Our facility has tested more than 225,000 patients during the COVID pandemic, is the major provider of diagnostic testing for the hospitals and physicians in Memphis and Shelby County. We handle as many as 18,000 patient samples per day for clinical testing, and last night we had work for over 10,000 COVID tests from patients. We selected this professional park area for our laboratory more than 10 years ago due to the professional nature of the business area and the traffic flow that facilitates our employees getting in and out of the building. Before you is a proposal that includes a convenience store, a gas station with a large parking area for large trucks. If one looks at the flow of traffic on Whitten, it would be clear that the location of this truck stop would create a significant traffic issue that would endanger lives and prohibit normal businesses to function effectively. Trucks would have little opportunity to turn left out of the store location across 4 busy oncoming traffic lanes onto Whitten to proceed back to the interstate without occluding traffic flow or endangering current traffic by entering the lanes, thus blocking traffic. The only other alternative is for trucks to depart on the side through Century Center Parkway, which was not built for high traffic, nor has the capacity for expansion. There are more than 2,000 people that work in the office park on the west side of Whitten, including Memphis Light, Gas, and Water offices, and already we have congestion of traffic flow. The city approved a left turning light at the intersection of Whitten and Century Center Parkway, but is yet to be installed after nearly a year. The majority of flow of traffic from the east side on Goodlet Farms turns right onto Whitten, and the traffic flow is from nearly as large a population as on the west side. So now we're talking over 4,000 people working in this park area. At times, it's impossible to turn left onto Whitten due to the traffic issues. If this development is approved, this will become a nightmare for traffic congestion and will clearly endanger lives with unnecessary risk for current workers. Please do not destroy this successful business park with a truck stop, which will only drive businesses away. I'll stop right there and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Smalley. Okay, do we have any questions of Dr. Smalley? Board members, do we have any questions? Hearing none, we're back to the applicant for your rebuttals. 3 minutes, or you have a little more time than that because you didn't take up your 10.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate the concerns that were brought forth about traffic. Traffic and security and safety is something that is very, very important to us. Safety and security is our number one priority for not only our patrons but our employees as well. That is why we like to do the layout a little bit differently, and we try to get a lot larger sites than what you would typically find for an operator of our size. Our traffic flow is very important to us. They are correct that the drive on Whitten is intended to be a right in, right out, and that was from working with engineering staff, that is not intended to be a left out, so that there is no concern about trucks or cars trying to make a left turn through 4 lanes of traffic, because that would not be a very safe lane maneuver. We've also been working with the adjacent gas station, and we actually were able to get them under contract last night. So what you see here will be a little bit different revised layout that we'll work with planning staff on to perfect, but we are not going to be increasing the traffic there because we are going to be replacing the existing, the current user that's there now. So I don't think that we're going to be increasing the traffic that's in this area, as there's only going to be one of us there. I defer my time for any other questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Chambers and or Dr. Smalley? Hearing none, we're going to close the public portion of our meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
Yes, move approval of agenda item number 10, PDRCI 94.
Second, Lee. Thanks.
Second by Ms. Wilbanks. Is there any discussion among the board members? Any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. We'll do a roll call.
And Madam Chair, before I do the roll call, I would make a recommendation on an additional condition just to be on the safe side, and that condition would read, based upon Mr. Chambers' comments just now, that new condition would read, this approval shall also include the parcel at the northwest corner of Century Club Parkway and Whitten. And that would allow the applicant to envelop that additional parcel. And number 2, in the board, if there's no movement on either one of these, or if there's one on the other but not on the one, then we can divide the question. But the other condition in question, Mr. Chambers used the word clarify, but I think what he meant was maybe strike. And that is the condition number 6 that says there shall be no overnight parking. I think if a board member agrees with his assessment and agrees it would not affect the end result, that would probably need to be struck versus, unless we can come up with a clarification limiting the number. But I just wanted to put those 2 potential amendments out there.
Okay. Would Dr. Pritchard read that as amended, or we?
No, Mr. Whitehead will read that as amended, please.
Well, if so I think what I hear is at least some movement that just to articulate the motion to at least get it on the floor, and that motion would be to make 2 amendments. One would be, and let me reverse the order here.
Okay.
One would be to strike the existing condition number 6, and amendment number 2 would be in its place the following language: this approval shall also include the parcel at the northwest corner of Century Club Parkway and Whitten, period.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
This is Jennifer. I just had a quick question for Josh.
Can we get a second, and then we'll get on the floor for discussion?
Second, please.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. O'Connell.
I like what you just said about maybe including some limitation to the number of trucks that can park overnight.
I am looking at the site plan right now, and if you, it's on YouTube right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, we could limit the truck parking to those spaces on the west or the top of the site. Or we could make further reductions. We could reopen the public hearing to get some feedback from Mr. Chambers.
Well, Josh, this is Darrell Thomas. It changes the whole. I was prepared one way, but when you mentioned the original language said shall not have overnight parking, and that's what I was in support of. If a driver comes there knowing that they need to sleep, they have other options at another truck stop. We should not allow overnight parking, and that was not in what was presented to us earlier. That kind of came at the end when you did the clarification.
Right. Mr. Thomas, can you do me a favor and make a motion to divide the question? In other words, let's vote on these two amendments separately.
Okay. I move that we divide the question and vote on the amendment separately.
Okay. And then do we have a second?
I second. McKinnon.
Okay. Let's take the easy one first. How about that? The allowing this proposal to incorporate the corner property, and we'll take these separately. So, Madam Chair, do you think we're ready for a vote on that amendment?
I assume, if there's no further discussion.
Okay. Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles-Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
And Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
And Chair Sharp?
Yes.
Okay, we got the easy one out of the way.
Okay. You're going to state the second?
So the second motion that now is on the floor is whether or not to allow overnight parking or not. Specifically, do we strike condition 6 or do we leave condition 6?
So, would we vote yes if we were for it and no if we were against it? The way you put it?
Because Dr. Pritchard's motion was making these two amendments, so the motion is to strike. So unless there's any further discussion, a yes vote would remove this prohibition, and a no vote would keep the prohibition in.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
I'm thinking, could we think about maybe having a few, spaces available rather than just yes or no? If we allowed for, say, four spaces, because I can see a situation where a trucker may need a few hours, and so it's not really a destination as a truck stop, but it's an accommodation for those that need to get off the road.
Well, I think we need to vote on this second part first with a yes or a no, and if it comes out no, then we can entertain Ms. O'Connell's.
Well, we could do it that way, but I think maybe what Ms. Connell is suggesting is that she puts up a friendly amendment, and if it's acceptable to the maker of the motion, then we now have a new massaged amendment that we can vote on. Ms. O'Connell, am I interpreting your statement correctly? Okay.
Yes.
And excuse me, this McKinnon, I would have to agree with Ms. O'Connell because of the amenities that have been stated by the applicant. I'm not seeing much to appease or appeal to an overnight guest to want to consistently stay, but in the emergencies situation to, remove someone from going past their hours, I think having somewhere and they have a trailer on the back, having somewhere to park to rest maybe those 6 hours is a little bit more advantageous, in safety conscience for the driver.
Okay, Mr. Thomas,
Josh,
do you agree, since that was your amendment?
Yes.
no,
So what would I
no,
would
no.
have to ask if we would add a friendly amendment to the amendment?
Yeah, but
Or no,
Mr. Thomas
how do I
has
say this, Josh?
agree, since he's the one that made the amendment.
Well,
That's the me.
Friendly amendment.
I'd like to respond to that.
Go ahead.
but
Okay, I drive a 45-foot rig, as you all know, and I know where truck stops are if I need to rest. These are experienced truckers. There would not be an emergency case where they would pull into that spot to get fuel. And we have truck stops all the way around Memphis. I'm considering the area in this as well. We should not. The original proposal did not have overnight in there, and we should leave that as is. Because if we put it there, people will start spending the night there. I just think we should not put that burden on that area. And we will not inconvenience truckers. They know what their limits are, and they'll go to a Love's or a Pilot's somewhere else around the city of Memphis. And they are plentiful. I know where every one of them is around the United States, and they know. So we're not putting an undue burden on truckers.
Okay, so we're voting on the amendment as stated by Mr. Thomas.
well, no one has formally made a motion requesting that Dr. Pritchard's original motion be amended. So unless there's a motion made and seconded, we're still at the strike condition 6 entirely. But we're still in discussion mode, so that's fine.
I don't want to strike it.
Okay, well, you can remove, now that the question's been divided, if there's no objection, we can remove this amendment. Any objections?
No.
Okay, well then that's off the table, which means our new condition is not number 6. It's at the end of the list, of course.
So, are we ready to vote on the case as amended with amendment number 1 and not the bifurcated amendment?
Unless there's another board member who has an amendment, an additional amendment. Okay.
Can we add an amendment? Can we add an amendment to make sure that it is a right in, right out only on Kirby Witten?
Okay. The curb cut on Witten shall be right in, right out. Does that sound good?
Yep. Right in, right out only. Yep.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Are there any objections? Okay, we'll make that part of the main approval motion since there's no objections. So, before us now is the approval, as you see it, with 2 new conditions, one regarding the parcel at the corner, which is now an existing gas station, and condition number 2, limiting the curb cut to right in, right out along Witten. Are we all ready?
Yes.
Clear as mud? Okay.
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
Yes.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
10 ayes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Dr. Pritchard?
Agenda item number 12, PD 20-04, Whitehaven, redevelopment of Graves Elementary at 3398 Graves Street to a VOTEC facility. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Okay, we do know that we have about 12 in opposition to this, so is the applicant present with your name and address, and then we'll hear the case by Mr. Barker.
Yes, on behalf of the applicant, this is Hunter Humphreys, Mark Jobe, and Will Pierce of the Glankler Brown Law Firm, address 6000 Poplar Avenue, Suite 400.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barker?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Again, Brian Barker with the Office of Planning and Development. I am presenting this case on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Jeffrey Penzis, who has reviewed this application for limited light industrial uses to allow planned development with the intent of operating a 3D printing and production operation, which would create custom jewelry, collectibles, and other memorabilia with an ancillary vocational tech training facility. This site is zoned residential single-family R10 district, and the adjacent land uses are single-family and institutional place of worship. The site photos are on pages 7 through 10 of the staff report, and on page 16, the concept plan can be seen as a main aspect of the revision was to limit truck traffic to Winchester Road by removing the connection to the parking lot on the western side of the site. This is a revised site plan that can be seen on page 16. Consistency with the Memphis 3.0 requirements are on pages 20 through 21. The request does not meet the criteria because a 3D printing light manufacturing facility is not considered an institutional use. However, the applicant has stated they intend to partner with the Shelby County Schools to provide both vocational and technical training in 3D printing to Shelby County students. As of the writing of the staff report, no partnership is yet in place. A vocational technical training school would be considered an institutional use, and therefore it is possible the development, or at least part of it, could be considered consistent. On the other hand, even under the scenario, the principal use would be to use a facility as a manufacturing, while the vocational use would be merely ancillary. The conclusions of staff listed on pages 27 through 28. The property is bounded by single-family residential, and locating a 3D manufacturing facility with ancillary vocational and technical training at this site would create a less than ideal situation for residents of this single-family neighborhood. The impact of day-to-day operations of a light manufacturing facility may be considered imprudent at this location and adversely impact the quality of life in the neighborhood, despite the applicant's proposed mitigation strategies and the limitations imposed as conditioned by staff. Furthermore, there are several instances of vacant land that is industrially zoned located within 1/4 mile radius of the property to the southwest, to the west, and north. See map on page 22. The proposed development may unduly injure or damage the use, value, and enjoyment of surrounding property, or unduly hinder or prevent the development of surrounding property in accordance with the current development policies and plans of the City of Memphis. The location and arrangement of the structures, parking areas, walks, lighting, and other service facilities may not be compatible with the surrounding land uses, which is residential. Staff recommends rejection. However, if approved, the staff recommends the proposed conditions on page 22 be included in the recommendation. Madam Chairman, that's all I have. I understand that we do have opposition, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have of me. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of Mr. Bacchus at this time? And I stand corrected. We're hearing this because it is a rejection and because we have opposition. So we are ready for the applicant to state your presentation, please, if we don't have any questions of Mr. Bacchus.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is Hunter Humphreys. I want to make a brief statement on behalf of the applicant and then turn this over to my partner, Mark Jobe, who's going to provide a more detailed response to the recommendation. First point I'd like to make is that this is a repurposing for light manufacturing. The current site of this property has been vacant for approximately 6 years. It was formerly a school, but it's vacant now. It's deteriorating. To our knowledge, there are no other plans that would involve redevelopment of this property, and there has been some suggestion that it might be developed for other public use in the future. But with the current pandemic and the economic issues that's going to continue to generate, the idea that there's going to be a substantial public project at this location are remote, we believe. Second thing, there's been discussion about this being some type of a factory. We want to point out, and Mark will provide more detail, that this is not a traditional factory or manufacturing plant. This type of manufacturing is contemplated here will not result in noise, will not result in emissions, will not have any substantial effect on traffic. So this is a different type of facility. Third, as far as the site itself, the site is approximately 10 acres. Our client will need 25 to 30 feet of interior clearance. So we're talking about a building where there's not a lot of height there. It will be a building with brick facade. The benefit of this building is that it's going to create substantial number of jobs for the Whitehaven community, skilled working jobs. Also, as mentioned in the staff report, there will be an opportunity for vocational education for high school students and others to learn these skilled job abilities that will benefit not only the current community but the future community. And a final point I'd like to make, and then turn it over to Mark, is that this applicant, one of his primary goals here is to provide a benefit for the Whitehaven community, and that he has substantial opportunities and potential incentives to locate in other communities, but would like to do this project for the benefit of Whitehaven. So I'd like to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to provide some more detail, and then we'll respond in any way we can. Thank you.
Mr. Humphreys, could you give us your address, please?
Yes, 6000 Poplar Avenue, Suite 400, Memphis 38119.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
thank
Mr.
you.
Joe.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chairman. Thank you for hearing from me. This project, we disagree with.
Your address? Excuse me, can we get your address?
Yes, ma'am. 6000 Poplar, Suite 400, Memphis 38119. This project has been mischaracterized, as Hunter said, as a old school, coal factory that may have billowing smoke, and that's not the case. This is going to be a 3D printing center with ancillary VOTEC, but the VOTEC piece is a very important part of the development and Mr. Weinshanker's goals. And the commercial component is required to give the opportunity for the VOTEC training. This 3D printing use, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the process, but again, it does not create noise and emissions. There will be that limitation is created under the PD. 3D printing is the process of making three-dimensional objects from a digital file. The idea here is you could produce customizable products using the intellectual property that the applicant owns rights to. There would be a website you'd be able to go on, design your product, and then they would be able to create it at this facility. The VOTEC piece, they would learn graphic design skills as well as the technical skills necessary to operate this new technology. Again, this is a new state-of-the-art facility that the use was not contemplated at the development or the approval of the UDC. So we shouldn't lose this project because it is a new type of use that hasn't been seen in this area before, and it would be an asset to Whitehaven. The staff states that this may create a less than ideal situation for the residents of the neighborhood and adversely affect the quality of life in the surrounding neighborhood. And to those points, I would state that will not be the case. This property, I drove out to it yesterday to make sure I set my eyes on it, and it is in very poor condition. The building is likely not to be able to salvageable in its current form. There's asbestos throughout. The portables have been broken into. The copper's been pulled off. All materials have been yanked off the buildings. Every window and door is boarded up. There's down telephone poles, and when our surveyor was out there, they actually found an ammunition clip on the property, fully loaded. So this development will bring life to a parcel that has been underutilized now for 6 years. And when I read the note that it may not be consistent with Memphis 3.0, we acknowledge that we need relief from the zoning code and the underlying zoning here. However, in doing my research on the community input and the goals of Whitehaven, I found a vision wall workshop notes from a neighborhood meeting on April 24th, 2018, with Memphis 3.0 held to get neighborhood input. During this, the major themes that were contained in the presentation and the community involvement were safety, better streetscapes and sidewalks, blight elimination, cleaner lots, youth education and amenities, more job centers for teenagers, career training, businesses within walking distance. This development serves all of those goals that have been voiced by the community. This is a creative project. It requires forward thinking, but this is the best project that can go forward at this site. It is a large building, but it will be, like Hunter said, brick facade. The aesthetic of the building will be to maintain the look of an education center. This is not going to be a sheet metal building, that would not help the community. This will be a state-of-the-art, well-maintained facility, and that's evidenced by how Graceland and the related operations are run. So with that, we'd ask that the board approve or support approval of this development by City Council. We think it's a good project. It will create jobs at $15 an hour with full benefits. It will provide training opportunities, and it supports the vision of Memphis 3.0, which otherwise this property will continue to deteriorate, and this brings it back on the tax rolls, provides jobs, employment tax revenue, sales tax revenue. The commercial activity will be limited to access off of Winchester, and the parking facilities will be, substantially as they are today. And we respectfully ask for your support and consider this a great project for the area.
Thank you very much. Board members, do we have any questions of Mr. Job or Mr. Humphreys before we go on to the opposition? There's not as many opposed as I originally said, but anyway, any questions of the applicants? Hearing none, then I'm assuming we're ready to hear from the opposition.
Yes, ma'am. We have 3 speakers on the line, the first being Dr. Yvonne Nelson.
Dr. Nelson, name and address
Yes,
again.
Dr. Yvonne D. Nelson, and I have resided at 3519 McCorkle Road since January 8th, 1993. I am a former PTO Vice President at Graves, a former Memphis City Beautiful Commissioner, and the current President of the Whitehaven Community Development Corporation. I thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. We do not agree with the request to rezone this 10.19 acre parcel that has been the centerpiece of our neighborhood since 1953. We affirm and agree with Planner Penzeza's staff report recommending the rejection of this planned development. This proposed use will not create a more desirable use of the land, nor will it allow for a creative and imaginative design. This high-rise building will create an adverse impact on adjoining low-rise homes. It is our position that the applicant has failed to achieve or even consider this requirement. The proposed height of the building has been eliminated from the report, but should be included for administrative review and approval. Elevations are a necessary requirement to allow for the consideration of surrounding land uses. The school is already elevated above the homes surrounding it, and a two-story factory on a hill would create a skyscraper in the neighborhood. Besides, no significant information was included to describe any significant topographical or proposed substantial regrading that would be required. In January 2015, Trotz Real Estate Services Incorporated conducted an appraisal on the parcel for Shelby County Schools. The resulting report described the property as originally being 11 acres, which were reduced to 10.189 acres when Winchester Road was widened in 1972. The applicant's outline plan describes the building to be 9.814 inches, which exceeds the 60% total lot area requirement. This fact should not be acceptable, permitted, looked over, or allowed. Of the 76 notices mailed, 3 went to duplicate addresses, 2 were mailed to Florida, 1 went to Honolulu, 1 to Sacramento, 1 to Olive Branch, 1 to Lamar Avenue, and another to Holmes Road. 1 went to a vacant lot, and 1 was actually mailed to the school. The 500-foot mailing radius did not exclude the 7 lanes of traffic south of the property and only included 4 additional homes. We feel that this was an inappropriate method of calculating this required mailing radius and only further serves the interests of the applicant. Based on these facts, the outline plan is inaccurate and should be removed from the application, thereby rendering it incomplete. We agree with your recommendations that the proposal does not meet the criteria stated in the Memphis 3.0 plan, that the proposed plan development will create a less than ideal situation for those who live in the vicinity, that the daily operations will only serve to further adversely impact the quality of life in this long ago established community consisting mostly of seniors, and that moving forward in any way other than with a full rejection will unduly injure or damage the use, value, and enjoyment of the surrounding property, the development of future properties, the overall compatibility with the surrounding land uses, and the fact that allowing this planned development to proceed would open the floodgates every other entity that desires to turn residentially zoned property into one of a light industrial nature. Furthermore, we agree with your statement that there are many parcels of comparably sized, already industrial zoned land within a 1-mile radius of this project that will be more suitable for such a project. We are therefore asking that you consider our community's voice and request to reject this proposal and not offer any conditions for approving it now or in the future. Again, we collectively thank you in advance for your consideration of our currently single-family residential community's overall voice to fully reject this for limited light industrial uses with the intent of operating a 3D printing and production operation which would create customizable jewelry and use it as an auxiliary vocational technical center that has no partnership been established, and we just believe that it will never be put in place for operating purposes. We would also like to reserve the right to address the land use control or any other board of oversight in writing for the purpose of an appeal by the appropriate governing board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Okay, next speaker.
Madam Chair, that brings us to Ms. Estelle Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Would you give us your address?
Could you unmute her? Ms. Martin?
Excuse me, you've unmuted me. I'll go take my list.
I believe, Madam Chair, that Ms. Martin said that Dr. Nelson relayed her sentiments.
Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Belinski?
Belinky.
Belinky. Would you give us
Good
your
afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Charles Belenke, 5019 Welshire Avenue, 38117. May I inquire how much time is left?
You have about 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. First, I want to hit a few things in response to the applicant's presentation, and then I have a number of specific points I want to raise. The applicant said this is not a factory, and yet it's manufacturing product. The applicant said there'll be no traffic. How can you have workers without traffic getting to and from the site? It's going to produce product. That would mean that you have deliveries of the supplies, the feedstock, and you would also have pickup of the product that's been manufactured. So how they can bald-facedly say there will be no traffic, I find incredible. This was a straight sale from the school district. There is no agreement between the applicant and the school district to create some sort of Votex enterprise. This is air. In addition, they've said that a majority, or at least a substantial portion of the work, will be done by these Votex trainees. In other words, like a cosmetology school, the workers are not getting paid to make the product. They're being, quote, trained, unquote, in how to operate the machinery. The few supervisors or instructors will be paid $15 an hour, full-time with benefits. Even if we take that at face value, that does not create jobs for this neighborhood. You cannot afford to live in this neighborhood on $15 an hour. This part of Whitehaven has relatively high property values, and the cost of living within a mile or so of the proposed site is far more than one can afford at $15 an hour. I mean, I suppose these 3-bedroom homes could be turned into rooming houses and bunk beds, and then you could afford to live there on $15 an hour, but that's a fundamental change of the neighborhood. The whole point that they're making is it's good to bring jobs to the people. They've completely ignored the argument that there are many, many, many vacant industrial facilities to the east, to the north, and even to the west that are perfectly suitable for this use. The applicant relates some statements that were made at a 3.0 meeting. None of those statements were site-specific. They were talking about Whitehaven in general and what things they wanted to bring in. Another point the applicant made was that this will put a property back on the tax rolls. Well, those of us that have been around a while know that nothing here is going to get built without a substantial pilot that will avoid paying any taxes for the foreseeable future. Now, I believe that this project should be disapproved right now. However, there is no logical reason why a telephonic or Zoom neighborhood meeting could not have been held. They simply used the option that was created by the secretary to waive the neighborhood meeting instead of being willing to talk to people about what could be there that would be of a benefit to the neighborhood. So those are the points that I want to emphasize in response to the applicant's presentation. The other things I wanted to mention were the square footage, which because of the actual square foot size of the property exceeds the allowable contribution. The inability of the applicant to address the question of the historic or aesthetic value of the existing building. The way that they've glossed over the fact that the VOTEC students working in this situation will not be compensated. The fact that they do say that they will continue.
30 seconds.
They say that there will not be traffic on Graves, and yet they're planning to use the existing parking on Graves. This neighborhood deserves to be treated like the Yorkshire neighborhood that was heard earlier, like the Barksdale neighborhood that was heard earlier. These are longtime residents who have tremendous pride and respect for their neighborhood, and to dump a factory, yes, it's not belching smoke, but to dump a factory in this neighborhood violates the fundamental principles of environmental justice. To treat this neighborhood differently is just plain wrong. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do you have any questions, board members, of either of the two opposers? Hearing none, we're going to go back to the rebuttal of the applicant. However, Mr. Belinkie, once he makes his rebuttal, then we go on to close the public portion of the meeting. You don't get a chance to rebuttal his rebuttal. So, are there any questions to the two opposers at this time? Hearing none, we're ready to hear from the applicants, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, we'd like to reiterate that this is the first step in this project. We're under contract to purchase the lot, but that's contingent on the use being approved. We cannot go forward. We can't continue to spend money without knowing that the project is actually feasible. So the reason there's not, renderings of the facility, et cetera, is just that. This is the first step. If we cannot get approval, this project is dead on arrival. With respect to the height concerns, the initial application did say 60 feet. As Hunter said, we need 25 to 30 foot interior clearance. Perhaps the condition for height could be limited to 40 feet, We complied with the UDC requirements regarding mailing notices, and our application was deemed complete by OPD. We did not skirt the neighborhood meeting. Rather, the COVID-19 pandemic arose and created the conditions that we're in, and OPD came up with or determined the policy of the city that the neighborhood meeting would not be required at this time. We did not say that there would be no traffic on Graves Road. We indicated that the 18-wheelers or tractor trailers that need to deliver the commercial products and goods necessary to conduct the activity here would enter off of Winchester and would have no access to roads. If there's any use of this property, it is going to create traffic on Graves Road to some extent. As an elementary school, I imagine there were cars lined up and down the street when children were being picked up. And it should also be noted that Dr. Nelson's opposition is driven by the fact that she had a plan for this property that has failed to move forward. It has no funding, and that use that she proposes and was shown in her materials includes housing for people without homeless people. It includes a barber shop and beauty center. It includes all sorts of uses that would increase traffic and increase activity that would be unwanted in the neighborhood. And as far as location, this is the site we have the opportunity to develop. I understand and we acknowledge that there are sites. Some of those are less than 500 feet or so from this property. Immediately behind the homes on Graves Road, there's a gravel parking area for tractor trailers. FedEx Freight is less than a half mile away. There's on Brooks Road, the block of Graves is between Brooks Road and Winchester. Immediately north of this property, the commercial frontage on Brooks is, or the frontage on Brooks is all commercial, including a waste facility. Again, to the extent there are any adverse conditions at the property, this will not create those, and this will not be a nuisance to the community and will, in fact, push Whitehaven forward with a state-of-the-art production facility. The jobs, the VOTEC trainees will not be unpaid, and the $15 an hour with benefits is the minimum. Again, you hear that number used a lot in terms of the desires of the community, not just in Memphis, but across the United States. Respectfully, we disagree with the recommendation of OPD and would ask this board to support this innovative project and support the redevelopment of this area that will increase property values and help the city as a whole.
Thank you very much. Board members, do we have any questions of the applicant? Or do we have any questions at all? Hearing none, this closes the public portion of our meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
Yes. Move approval of agenda item number 12, PD 20-04.
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. This will be a roll call.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Mr. Fleming?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Yes.
Let's see, Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
And Chair Sharp?
No.
6 ayes, 4 nays.
Motion, what did you say again? Say that to me again.
6 yes, 4 no.
Okay, motion carries.
Agenda item number 13, SUP 20-04 Hickory Hill, special use permit for vehicle rental at 5359 Winchester Road. Staff recommendation is rejection.
Okay, since the staff recommendation is rejection, we're going to go ahead and hear the case, but we need to know if the applicant is present.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Norma Sanchez.
Okay, and your
Can you
address?
guys hear me? 5359 Winchester Road.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear the case. Mr. Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brian Bacchus again with the Office of Planning and Development, presenting this case for a special use permit on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Brett Davis. This application is for a special permit to allow vehicle leasing or rental on a little over half-acre property in the commercial mixed-use district in in the southeastern portion of the city in the Hickory Hill neighborhood. The applicant is requesting the special permit for vehicle leasing at 5359 Winchester. The vehicle business would share the existing structure with an existing restaurant also operated by the applicant. The applicant intends to transport the vehicles for rent to and from the site every business day to be parked in nearby residential areas. The CMU district intent statement says that auto-oriented uses are not appropriate in this district. The site is adjacent to the Power Center subdivision or Power Center Plan Development that was approved by this board and by the City Council. A single-family residential subdivision developed in that center, as well as across the street from the Power Center Academy. For these reasons, staff finds that this proposal is inconsistent with the intent of the code and with the character of nearby land uses. Therefore, does not meet the special use permit approval criteria. The proposal is inconsistent with the Memphis 3.0 plan as stated on pages 25 through 26, and The staff has recommended rejection of this application, and I believe there are conditions attached on page 23 of the staff report for your review. Thank you, Madam Chairman. That's all I have at this time. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have of me or staff. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Balkus. Do we have any questions of Mr. Balkus? Hearing none, I assume we're ready for the applicant to make their presentation.
Ms. Sanchez, we're back to you.
Okay. Well, so the reason how we're gonna do it, see, most people, I'm Hispanic, and usually when you go to a car rental place, they ask a lot of things, especially for Hispanics. They make it harder for us, and since I'm Hispanic, I want to help my people out and make it easier for them to rent a car. And actually, where we're gonna put all the cars is actually behind the building. We're planning on, like, if we get approved, which hopefully we do, to build a fence, and like make sure the cars are secure, and like for people to come in and be like, rent a car.
Is that the end of your presentation?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So you have more time for your rebuttal since you didn't take that long. We're ready to hear from the opposition. That is, if the board does not have any questions for her at this time. Do you have any questions? If not, we're ready for the opposition.
Well, Madam Chair, we were the opposition, OPD. There is no other speakers in opposition.
There are not.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. I was trying to do two things at once. Okay. All right. So, are there any questions? Hearing none, then we're going to close the public portion of our meeting. Dr. Pritchard?
Yes. Just 1 second, Madam Chair. Move approval of agenda item number 13, SUP 20-04.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Ms. Wilbank, is there any discussion among the board members? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote via roll call.
Mr. Fleming?
No.
Mr. Tolles?
No.
Dr. Pritchard?
No.
Ms. O'Connell?
No.
Vice Chair Lyles Wallace?
No.
Mr. Gill?
No.
Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Chair Sharp?
No.
10 nays.
I'm sorry, motion fails. Thank you very much. If there's not any more from Mr. Whitehead, I'm going to assume that we're going to adjourn this meeting at 1:30.
Great job, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Great job,
Thank you, OPD.
Josh and Madam Chair.